When the black-robed man saw the light barrier appear around them, he put his hands together in an incantation gesture and began to utter an ancient and obscure incantation. A sinister devilish chi erupted from his body and transformed into an inky black tentacle that continuously waved itself around. Hanli's eyes narrowed as he stared at the black-robed man. However, faint sounds of thunder rang from the cuff of his sleeve along with a flicker of golden light. Hanli had once before killed a devil cultivator of a similar cultivation in an instant. So long as he took advantage of the opening when the devil cultivator attacks, he would be able to deal with him with ease. But in that next moment the black-robed man's eyes glowed scarlet, and a beastly, savage roar left his mouth. Soon after, the devilish chi surrounding his body disappeared. Instead, it expanded, doubling in size in the blink of an eye. "Yi," Hanli yelped in surprise. His astonishment wasn't due to his opponent's sudden transformation, but the complete disappearance of his devilish chi. A strange, unstable aura had replaced it. The black-robed man's crimson eyes revealed a trace of madness. His inflated body then shrank into the size of a 3-foot-tall dwarf before shooting back towards the wall of the barrier in a blur. In his alarm, Hanli's mind began to churn. He felt a faint sense of dread. He raised his hand and shot 2 dense bolts of lightning from his hands, forming a huge net of lightning in the air to capture the black-robed man. Soon after, he shook his sleeve, summoning a small blue shield in front of him. It quickly enlarged and blocked his front. He then slapped his storage pouch with his other hand, summoning the restriction-breaking bead into his grasp. If matters turned for the worse, he would immediately make use of the bead and break the restriction. Since he knew his opponent was up to no good, he wasn't about to stay still and subject himself to harm. Just as Hanli's thoughts fluttered about, the black-robed man let out a miserable scream when the net of golden lightning enveloped him. Then, with a huge explosion, every inch of his body scattering through the air as a bloody pulp. Hanli found himself in complete amazement. He originally believed his opponent had performed some ferocious self-detonation technique. However, the entirety of his flesh was scattered all over the light barrier. The explosion itself didn't contain an iota of power. During Hanli's bewilderment, he discovered something odd. His opponent's flesh remained stuck onto the light barrier rather than dropping to the ground. As Hanli stared at the flesh, he saw that they began to squirm. He was dumbstruck by the sight. With several pops, the flesh remained sputtered into crimson mist and began to spread around the light barrier. In the blink of an eye, it had painted a majority of the light barrier crimson, and a bloody, pungent scent filled the air. Hanli was aghast, and he hastily threw the restriction-breaking bead behind him. With a bang, a black light ruptured as soon as the restriction-breaking bead struck the barrier. Soon after, the affected portion of the barrier flashed with light, causing the entire barrier to tremble. Hanli was overjoyed by the sight, and he hastily flicked his fingers, launching successive attacks of azure light at the affected area in an attempt to break it. But during that moment, a crimson light flashed before him, enveloping the weakened portion of the barrier in mist. Hanli felt his heart sank and he glanced around, discovering that the entire light barrier had turned crimson and roiled with crimson mist on its surface. Drops of blood seemed to be forming out of nowhere, further condensing the putrid scent of blood in the air. Without another thought, he opened his mouth and shot a thick, dense bolt of lightning at the crimson wall in front of him. In a burst of golden light, the crimson mist scattered, but it soon restored itself to its original form, as if it hadn't suffered any damage in the first place. In his shock, he ceased his plan of releasing his bamboo cloudswarm swords and wore a grave expression. At that same moment, the other 9 wagered battles had experienced the same scene. With self-detonation, the barriers turned crimson with blood. The 10 Heavenly South cultivators in the wagered battles were all trapped by the light barriers, seized by a technique they couldn't defend against. The 10 Heavenly South core formation cultivators that were controlling the spell formation from the outside knew things were far from good. They vigilantly glanced at the spell warriors across from them as they hurriedly formed the hand incantations to halt the spell formation. To their surprise, the spell warriors immediately flew back to their armies without a word once they saw the barriers turn crimson. The 10 core formation cultivators weren't relieved in the slightest. Rather, they all knew that matters were grim. It seemed the change in the light barrier was certainly the Mulen's doing. They managed to dissolve the spell formation barrier as they expected, but strangely enough, a crimson mist had appeared in its place. The mist began to spin and condensed into a thick crimson layer, forming a complete barrier around it. It appeared as if were made of the blood of several hundred people. When Master Sunreach and the others saw the blood barrier appear, and that the 10 cultivators down below were unable to stop it, they managed to keep calm as they suddenly flew down in streaks of dazzling light. Once Master Sunreach arrived down below, he examined the barrier with astonishment and gloomily said, "Go back. This isn't something that you're capable of dealing with." When the cultivators heard this, they were greatly relieved and hastily withdrew. Before Cultivator Song left, she glanced at Han Li's blood barrier with a trace of worry. On the other side, the shriveled old man and the other spell warriors grew excited upon seeing the Heavenly South nascent soul cultivators trapped. They also appeared calm, as they watched the 3 late nascent soul cultivators fly down to the spell formations, as if they weren't afraid of the barrier being broken. The shriveled old man turned around and smiled at the black-robed man standing behind him. "Sect Master Fang, it is a success. I hope this blood-catching barrier is as formidable as you say, and is capable of trapping these 10 cultivators for half a day. With 10 fewer nascent soul cultivators, their strength will be greatly decreased. We'll be able to strike a decisive blow against the Heavenly South during this time." The black-robed man glanced at the shriveled old man and coldly smiled. "Don't worry. This blood-catching barrier is one of my Sect's 6 grand techniques. Not only was each blood corpse nurtured for 100 years, but we particularly had the blood corpses consume a devil spirit pill. I also personally controlled the blood corpses with a thread of my spiritual sense in order to conceal their true identity. With such care taken, I was completely confident of its success. Even if those late nascent soul cultivators wished to eliminate the barrier, they wouldn't be able to accomplish it in a short amount of time without consuming a large amount of magic power. Will you be giving them the opportunity to do so?" As if proving the black-robed man's words, Master Sunreach had arrived before the blood barrier and swiped at it with a blinding cut of sword chi. With a series of fierce echoes, the blood barrier merely shook for a second before turning to normal. Master Sunreach wore a gloomy expression upon seeing this. When Wei Wuya and Devil Conquered saw this, they didn't bother to attack the barrier. With their experience, they were able to immediately see just how powerful the blood barrier was. This blood barrier was extremely durable, and there were other peculiarities about it. But from that single strike, the 3 were able to tell that this barrier solely meant to trap and isolate rather than to harm enemies. The 3 glanced at each other, and Riley smiled. They originally believed that the wagered battles were an opportunity to heavily injure the strength of the Mulan. They hadn't expected that the enemy planned to trap 10 of their most powerful from the very beginning. This miscalculation had caught the 3 eccentrics off guard, causing most of their preparations to be in vain. Wei Wuya sighed and slowly asked, "Brother Yi, what kind of devil Dao technique is this? Does your 6 devil Dao sects have techniques of this nature? Those people self-detonated to employ them. It's unfathomable." Devil Conquered replied with a frown, "We have no such techniques. This is the first time I've seen such a strange secret technique. It seems the cultivators of the Jin Empire cannot be underestimated." In their annoyance, they didn't have the mind to question their enemies. Drumbeats were already pounding from the spell warrior. Armies and divisions of spell warriors began to take to the air. As for the spell warriors that remained on the ground, they began to chant a series of incantations and assumed a position to attack. The 3 great cultivators were unshaken by the sight of this. The formations of their own army began to move in response. Varied color lights began to shine from it. Master Sunreach thoughtfully said, "We've suffered quite the loss, but it is fortunate that they are only temporarily trapped rather than dead. So long as they can stall, they will have the opportunity to emerge. We originally had more high-grade cultivators to start with. Even if we have 10 fewer, we won't be that much weaker." Devil Conquered and Wei Wuya knew that these were only self-comforting words. With matters having come to this point, there was nothing they could do despite the fury in their hearts. "You aren't needed to direct the battle as it unfolds. We only need to deal with the 3 Mulan divine sages." An ominous glint flickered from Devil Conquered's eyes as he spoke. He then paid no further notice to the 2 at his side and raised his head to shout at the spell warrior army, "I've long heard of the 3 Mulan divine sages possessing unfathomably profound spirit techniques. Might I ask to experience them and invite you to battle?" With the use of a secret technique, Devil Conquered's yell caused the air within several kilometers to tremble and leave echoes in its wake. For a time, the incantation being uttered from both armies were interrupted. Even a few of the spell warriors in the air swayed. Those with weaker cultivation had also momentarily fallen from the sky. Devil Conquered's challenge ringing through the air, the shriveled old man frowned. but he soon spoke with a tranquil tone. "We will have the fight with the three great heavenly south cultivators sooner or later. However, I must remain behind to direct the battle and cannot fight. I'll have to trouble Sect Master Fang to occupy one of them. It should prove an easy task given that you've cultivated the Heaven Flash Devil arts to its peak stage and can take in the Heaven Fiend Devil's true chi into your body. Since I've already come to an agreement with you, I will be taking action. I also wish to test the abilities to the top Devil Dao cultivator in the Heavenly South." The black-robed man spoke with a cold tone. With green light glowing from his eyes, black chi began to slowly ascend from his body before he took off in the direction of Devil Conquered. As for the scholarly man surnamed Zhang and the short man surnamed Bu, they wordlessly flew after him in streaks of silver and red light. When the three great Heavenly South cultivators saw this, they hastily pursued them. The six of them then disappeared into the clouds without further trace of them. Not long after, the color of the nearby sky began to change in color. It turned from fire red one moment to pitch black, another with thunderous explosions echoing across the skies. Flashes of light would occasionally flash and illuminate the clouds. As six late nascent soul cultivators began to fight, the battle between the cultivator and spell warrior armies on the ground and lower sky unfolded. However, it was vastly different from a battle between a small number of cultivators, when they would approach and strike one another when they were in range. Instead, both armies chanted various incantations and first activate various defensive formations around themselves, slowly raising a huge light barrier at the center of two armies, shrouding their main forces. It was clear to see that the cultivators had finished setting up their defenses first. However, that doesn't mean that the cultivator's elemental Taoist techniques are superior to the spell warrior's spirit techniques. This display of speed was only because a majority of defensive spell formations were made from formation tools. With the initiative seized, Long Han, the commander of the Heavenly South Army, resolutely gave the order to begin the attack. The first wave of attacks were to be launched by over 10 rare far-range treasures, the huge gong Han Li saw earlier being one of them. At that moment, the platform supporting the gong was already placed at the very front of the army division. It floated off the ground as if weighing nothing and stopped about 100 meters in the air with 8 large yellow-clothed men standing guard around it. As for the large man that had been sitting at its side, he was now stood at the gong's side with a 3-meter-tall iron hammer in his hand, his eyes still closed. A short distance away, there were 2 men that were raising a 20-meter-tall triangular banner that shined with black light. There was a vivid and lifelike black flood dragon embroidered on top of it. Farther away, there were 9 red-clothed young women that were holding up a tray covered in red cloth that seemed to conceal something underneath. They were arranged in a strange formation as they gently floated in the air. Among them were 3 embroidered-robed old men, were each carrying a gourd half their height on their backs. They walked at the very front of their troop. These 3 groups were amongst the first to hear the order to attack. The large man standing next to the copper gong suddenly opened his eyes. An aura of yellow light suddenly emitted from his body, and he swung the large hammer at the center of the gong as fiercely as he could. A blinding golden light glared for just a moment before disappearing. In the instant the golden light appeared, it had dissolved into specks of starlight before launching themselves towards the enemy. But just as soon as it flew about 40 meters, the golden specks had turned into clouds of golden mist with a series of pops. The large man struck the bronze gong repeatedly, launching barrage after barrage of golden specks from the gong. The golden mist soon turned into a wave as it rushed towards the spell warriors. The triangular black banner was wildly shaken by the 2 cultivators underneath it, releasing a black flood dragon out of seemingly nowhere. The flood dragon flew through the air, leaving behind threads of azure and black smoke from its mouth. Then, with a fierce gust of wind, a black windstorm formed, blowing rock and sand all around it and preventing nearby cultivators from watching it. The young, red-clothed women simultaneously rested their hands on top of the large tray they were carrying and uttered pleasant incantations. In a flash of red light, 9 brilliant red copper plates flew out from the tray and began to twirl around each other in the air. They were all meter-long fire-red mirrors that shined with spirit light. Countless fist-sized firebirds emerged from them, their bodies and mouths all burning with flame. With a series of clear cries, they shot towards the spell warrior army like arrows. The 3 embroidered-robed old men stood in a triangle formation before taking out the giant gourds on their back. As soon as they were opened, a bone-piercing icy white chi instantly spread to an area in front of it, covering it in a layer of frost. The frost quickly spread towards the spell warriors. The strike from these exceptional treasures occurred at nearly the same time the spell warriors managed to raise their own spell formation barrier. Even under the shriveled old man's command, their only option was to endure. In the following instant, the golden mist, the black winds, and the firebirds all struck the spell warrior barrier with their attacks, causing it to tremble. When Longhand saw this, he immediately ordered for the second wave of attacks before the first wave of attacks was over. These wave of large-scale attacks were conducted through the use of secret techniques by the joint efforts of each sect. Various colored beams of light and overflowing devil fire shot out from the cultivator army, striking the spell warrior army immediately after the first wave of attacks. These attacks struck true once more, relentlessly damaging the spell warrior's defensive barrier. The shriveled old man wore a gloomy expression on his face. He completely didn't expect that the spell techniques would activate so slowly and leave the spell warrior army vulnerable. Under such vicious attacks, his spell warriors were suppressed, without the opportunity to withdraw or launch a counterattack. These fearsome large-scale attacks were something that even a nascent soul cultivator wouldn't dare to receive without the protection of a spell formation. The shriveled old man turned to the black-robed woman at his side. "Madame Lu, it seems we will need you to use your huge beasts, else we won't be able to hold our ground." The woman smiled and carelessly said, "Since our sect master has lent them to you, feel free to use them. There is no need to tell me personally." The shriveled old man nodded and immediately gave the order. A series of bellowing roars shook the skies, followed by the appearance of over 10 huge silhouettes. They forcefully blocked the various attacks from hitting the spell warriors. These giant armored beasts immediately rushed in the direction of the cultivator army as soon as they appeared. With their appearance, the cultivators split off their attacks, with some of them attacking the beasts while others relentlessly attacked the spell warrior army. Several high-grade spell warriors quickly flew out at that moment, taking advantage of the weakened assault. As they flew, they tossed several tens of various colored beads into the air and began to mutter an incantation. An inconceivable scene occurred before them. A few of the beads directly bore into the ground and disappeared from sight, while a few others resolved in the air while wrapped in azure light. There were also those that produced clear water, pulsed with dazzling light, and emitted raging flames. Soon after, these beads transformed into the form of demon beasts, such as 30-meter-long yellow pythons, 20-meter-tall fire wolves, transparent azure rocks, blue demon tortoises covered in icy mist, and much more. As soon as these demon beasts appeared, they followed after the huge armored beasts and charged straight towards the cultivator armies. Because of the innate defenses of the huge beasts, along with armor and defensive spells, they were able to continue their charge despite the battered conditions of their bodies. As for the strange beasts following after them, they were on the brink of destruction. Although they possessed a fearsome aura, most of their bodies scattered after a single attack, turning them into specks of spirit light. With their form dissipated, the beads fell onto the ground, completely void of any spiritual chi. High-grade spell warriors didn't seem to mind this in the slightest. They raised their arms once more and tossed out another batch of pellets. With another incantation, the strange beasts came to life and fearlessly charged forward. When this occurred, many cultivators appeared alarmed and drew more attention towards these beasts, reducing the number of attacks on the spell warrior barrier. Longhand's expression sank. He hastily thought to give orders, but he hesitated. With this difficultly acquired opportunity, the shriveled old man gave the order to begin their spell technique assault. In an instant, various colored spirit lights glowed. As incantations were chanted, 3-meter-wide fireballs and icicles the size of trees began to form from thin air. Spirit technique spell formation. When Longhand saw this, he muttered to himself. Knowing that he was incapable of suppressing their attack, he hastily sent a voice transmission. Suddenly, the rare treasures ceased their attacks, and their owners hastily withdrew back into the ranks of their troops before returning back into the barrier. At that same moment, over 1,000 cultivators flew out from the barrier, each holding a meter-tall formation flag. They quickly formed an astonishingly huge spell formation in a quick shuffle. The formation flags were then thrown in the air, forming a layer of rainbow light above the cultivator army, providing an additional barrier against the Mulan attack. At that moment, several hundreds of huge fireballs and icicles struck down, enveloping their surroundings in waves of fire and mists of ice. As for the huge beasts and the hollow demon beasts, they were already halfway to the cultivator army. Only the 8 strongest of the huge beasts remained, and a majority of the second wave of hollow demon beasts had already been wiped out. However, the demon beasts were completely fearless in the face of the vast cultivator army and continued their overbearing charge. The cultivator's layer of rainbow light was clearly specialized in blocking spirit techniques. Under such heavy attacks, the light barrier wasn't shaken in the slightest. Longhand rejoiced at the sight. The 1,000 of cultivators that had activated the formation were elite disciples from the Nine Nations Union. From how skillfully they placed down their spell formation, it appears that Wei Wuya's description of them wasn't exaggerated. Seeing that the attack had no effect, the shriveled old man's expression grew unsightly, but he immediately ordered another wave of attacks regardless. The next series of incantations from the spell warrior army didn't form simple fireballs and icicles. Rather, fire crows and translucent ice pythons began to take form in the sky. Of course, due to its increased complexity, the attack took longer to channel. At that moment, a series of disturbances occurred in the cultivator army, and a division of green-robed cultivators flew out from barrier. They raised spirit beast pouch from their waist and released several tens of different demon beasts in a burst of rainbow light. The three in the lead appeared particularly uncommon. There was a rarely seen dragon horse, with a horn on its head and scales that twinkled with white light on its body, a two-headed demon lion with a fishy scent and green fur, and the most fearsome of them all, a 15-meter-long venomous scorpion with a crimson shell and a pitch-black stinger. These demon beasts were the most vicious and meticulously nurtured spirit beasts of the controlling spirit sect. Immediately after they were released, they led an overbearing charge against the huge beasts and transformed spirit beasts. For a time, the beasts fought together in a chaotic battle. Although only the three main spirit beasts could stand against one of the huge beasts alone, they had numbers on their side. They were well trained. Together, they were able to block the huge beasts, advance, and even gain the upper hand in battle. At the same time that the demon beasts were released, several thousand cultivators took to the skies. As they flew, these 5 cultivators' divisions each wielded their various magic tools and rained down attacks upon the spell warrior army. The current wave of spirit techniques that the spell warriors were casting were far more vicious than the others. As such, the cultivators wouldn't calmly wait for the spell warriors to finish, and they continuously sent waves of magic tool attacks and raging waves, wearing down the Mulan defensive spell formation. The shriveled old man's expression sank, and he coldly snorted before giving the order for a large number of spell warriors to fly to the skies and engage the cultivators in battle. A fierce exchange of spirit techniques, magic tools and treasures erupted through the sky. In the confrontation, several hundreds of defensive magic tools ruptured upon receiving enemy attacks, and their owns fell from the skies, making for a desperate sight. But in that moment of delay, the spell warrior army had already finished preparations for their next spell technique barrage. Several tens of fire crows and ice pythons charged towards the cultivator armies as if they were alive. Likewise, in the time the Mulan were casting their spell techniques, the cultivators had also prepared defenses. Before the attacks could land, countless magic treasures and tools flew into the air and struck down a majority of the flame crows and ice pythons. As for those who made it through, they were completely blocked by the rainbow light barrier, causing no lasting damage, only a few sways. Longhand frowned when he saw this. It seemed the Nine Nations Union's defensive spell formation was incapable of completely blocking more powerful spell techniques. After breathing out a long sigh, he gave the order for the cultivator army to slowly advance towards the spell warriors under the protection of the rainbow barrier. At that same moment, many cultivators began taking out their magic tools and treasures, using them to protect themselves. Soon, various incantations followed, and the magic tools and treasure began to brightly shine as if being readied for an attack. The shriveled old man's eyes coldly glinted. He knew that the cultivators risked taking the initiative to approach to interrupt the casting for another spirit technique barrage, and they were successful. With these new developments, he gave the order for the spell warrior army to leave their defensive barrier and slowly march forward. The distance between both sides quickly drew closer. When the armies were only 300 meters away from each other, they could faintly see their enemies' faces. 7 white jade talismans took the initiative to leave the ranks of the cultivators, each talisman sent out by 7 solemn old men from the Phoenix Cry sect. Just as the jade talismans were released, they shot towards the ranks of the spell warriors in streaks of white light, and revolved about 100 meters above them before revealing their true form. They contracted and swelled before releasing sky-shaking claps of thunder. Each of the 7 talismans shattered and turned into balls of dazzling white lightning. As they floated in place, They suddenly grew in size, expanding to miniature suns the size of 30 meters in length in the blink of an eye. Many of the spell warriors couldn't help but look above, dumbstruck at the sight of them. Not good, it's an ancient talisman. The shriveled old man lost his composure at the sight of this and turned pale with fright. Before he could react, the 7 blazing suns exploded in succession. Scorching arcs of electricity surged instantly above the spell warriors, covering them in 7 huge arcs of electricity. The others seemed to have taken this as a sign for actions. Countless flashes of various colored light filled the sky as they tossed their own talismans into the fray. At that moment, a muffled thunder clapped from within the white light. "It seems quite lively on the outside," Han Li muttered to himself. At that moment, he was staring at the crimson barrier in front of him with complete tranquility. Ever since he realized that the Mulan planned to trap them, Han Li's worries had disappeared without a trace. The Mulan might be completely confident in this barrier, but likewise, Han Li was confident in his ability to dispel restrictions. However, he had to be careful deciding when he would emerge. Although Han Li might be willing to lend his strength to resist the Mulan invasion, he also didn't wish to become cannon fodder and die a worthless death in the middle of a chaotic battle. After all, this was a war between armies of cultivators, not a battle against single cultivators. If he were spotted by several nascent soul stage cultivators as soon as he appeared, or was met with the simultaneous attack of hundreds of spell warriors, it would prove very dangerous even with his lightning movement. It would only be safer to emerge once the melee starts between both armies, when a majority of high-grade cultivators were fighting each other. Of course, even if the blood barrier hadn't appeared, Han Li would have had other methods of disappearing during the most dangerous parts of the battle. Able to feel the thunderous vibrations through the barrier, Han Li felt that it was a sign that the melee was about to start. While he didn't know what caused such an astonishing attack, he knew that it was certain to be devastating to the side that received it. With that thought, Han Li sighed and he shook his head before examining the other areas of the blood barrier. The blood barrier was truly weird. His spiritual sense wasn't able to penetrate it in the slightest. While it was clear this restriction was a Devil Dao technique, his divine Devilbane lightning had no effect on it, greatly arousing Han Li's interest. Previously, Han Li had examined various areas of the blood barrier using his bright-sight spirit eyes, but he wasn't able to see anything apart from the layer of red. This hadn't flustered Han Li at all, and with the battle occurring on the outside, he still had quite a bit of time to study it. Han Li opened his mouth and spat out a small azure sword. Wielding it with his spiritual sense, he had it transform into a foot-long streak of light and fiercely strike at the barrier. With a muffled bang, the barrier remained unshaken, and his flying sword was flung back by 3 meters. Unsurprised, Han Li withdrew the flying sword and took out a pitch-black item in his hand. It was the magic treasure, the 1,000-fold mountain. He tossed it into the air and formed an incantation gesture with his hands. Black light flashed, revealing a small mountain that was over 30 meters tall. With a point of his finger, the mountain trembled before fiercely striking at the distant wall. With a loud smash, the black and crimson light intertwined, but the mountain was repelled, resulting in only a few light trembles from the barrier. A trace of shock appeared on Han Li's face, and he held his chin in hand as he pondered a bit more over the matter. Soon, he pointed to the small mountain once more and had the treasure fly towards the center of the blood barrier. Then, with a muttered incantation, the small mountain glowed with black light as it began to rapidly expand. A short moment later, it grew over 200 meters tall and pressed against the top and bottom of the barrier. Without any intention of stopping, Han Li raised his arms and struck the small mountain with several spell seals, causing it to enlarge at even greater speeds. With rumbling swaying, the mountain grew to over 300 meters tall as its entire body shined with black light. It appeared as if it were a huge pillar firmly propping up the crimson barrier. Soon, the mountain began to cause a slight protrusion from the barrier, followed by violent swaying. Han Li rejoiced at the sight of this and hastily circulated the spiritual power in his body. As he continued to strike various spell seals at the small mountain, it grew ever so slowly as it deformed the blood barrier before it was blocked from further expanding. Han Li ceased his incantation gestures and stared at the top of the blood barrier with narrowed eyes. It seemed that using the 1,000-fold mountain to break the restrictions wasn't going to work. He would have to try using the celestial ice flames and the purple apex flames to break it. Han Li waved at the huge mountain, and it shrunk back to several inches in size in a flash of light before flying back into his sleeve. And in a display of tenacity, the blood barrier shortly returned to its original shape. He turned around and extended his finger. With a crackle, a walnut-sized ball of faint blue flames appeared on his fingertip. Han Li then shouted, "Go!" sending the fireball to strike the distant wall. With a light bang, the blue flames ruptured and formed a blue icy layer that covered the inner layer of the barrier, turning its interior into a world of a severe winter. It had turned so cold that one's breath would turn to frost as soon as they breathed out. Sparkling blue covering the inner layer of the blood barrier, Han Li pressed his hand against it in a blur, striking at the dense layer of ice with azure sword chi. As a result, the ice around his hand shattered into translucent fragments of ice drifting through the air. Han Li's expression grew sullen. The area where he struck at the ice was unscathed and still as crimson as blood. The barrier wasn't truly frozen, though. Its surface was merely covered in a layer of frost. Blood chi still roiled at the center of it. Han Li pondered for a moment before sweeping his hand, covering it in purple devil flames. He pressed it directly against the blood barrier. The difference in strength between the celestial ice flames and the purple apex flames were clear to see. As soon as the purple flames touched the wall, the blood mist protruding from the barrier instantly solidified and began to glow with a brilliant purple light. With a smile on his face, he carefully controlled the purple apex flames and concentrated their power on a small portion of the barrier. He then opened his mouth and spat out a bolt of golden lightning, thunder ringing from his mouth. Golden light flashed as the lightning struck the barrier, leaving behind fine cracks. But soon, the barrier violently shook and instantly mended itself. Han Li was dumbstruck. The blood barrier greatly resembled ghost Dao techniques. It was even capable of restoring itself. It was no wonder why the Mulan was so confident in this restriction. Even the purple apex flames was incapable of damaging it. Truly, the restriction was more than capable of trapping nascent soul cultivators. Although he felt somewhat alarmed, Han Li quickly slapped his storage pouch and took out an azure thumb-sized pearl into his hand. This was one of his newly refined lightning beads. Ever since he had refined it, he hadn't had a chance to test it yet. Having no other way of sensing how the battle was faring on the outside apart from the rolls of thunder, Han Li believed that there should be many obstructions waiting for him as the battle was still in its beginning phase. Additionally, if he were too slow in escaping the barrier, the cultivator army would have already been defeated, leaving him surrounded by the Mulan forces. No matter how exceptional he may be, he wouldn't be able to escape from that. With that in mind, the lightning bead began to glow as he willed the lightning bead to spin in his hand before shooting towards the blood barrier. With a muffled roar of thunder, a head-sized ball of gold azure light struck the ceiling of the barrier, violently shaking the entire dome as a result. A trace of astonishment appeared from Han Li's expression. The might of these lightning beads were far beyond what he had expected. Just as the thought surfaced in his mind, his expression made a sudden change and azure light brightly shined from his body as he shot through the air. The strike from the lightning bead was able of easily ripping open a small hole in the blood barrier, causing Han Li to fly towards it without another thought. The hole rapidly shrunk, but Han Li was able to escape just in time. He was overjoyed. The lightning bead created from purple flames and azure lantern flames could easily break through such a durable barrier, much to his surprise. Had the lightning bead not worked, his only other options was to use the gold-devouring beetles or the blood devil sword. Although there was nothing the gold-devouring beetles couldn't consume, devouring the barrier would have taken time. As for the blood devil sword, the consequences of its use wasn't something that Han Li could accept lightly. The nameless lightning bead's ability to deal with the blood barrier came as a pleasant surprise. It seemed the purple apex flames was incapable of breaking the restriction because it was inherently an ice attribute flame, unlike the lantern flames which were a true fire attribute flame. But when Han Li flew out of the barrier, he heard many astonished cries of alarm before he could clearly see what was going on. Followed by that, there were various explosions, rumbles, and furious roars from all around him. Han Li hastily looked at the scene in astonishment. At that moment, he was surrounded by 10 spell warriors. Fortunately, he was able to quickly see that their cultivations wasn't very high. There were 2 core formation spell warriors, with the rest of them being at foundation establishment stage. They were all holding onto formation flags and were about to prepare a spirit technique attack. But when Han Li emerged from the blood barrier, he appeared right in front of them. Han Li ignored them and examined the surroundings instead. He felt his breath turn cold. The area surrounding him, be it sky or ground, were all densely filled with spiritual light and treasure aura, not to mention a rapid succession of explosions far and near. The cultivators and spell warriors from both sides were engaged in a melee, with groups of varying numbers engaging one another. At that moment, Han Li wasn't able to see which side was winning, and he turned his gaze to coldly examine the nearby spell warriors. When these spell warriors saw Han Li emerge from the blood barrier, they were dumbstruck. "Not good, he's a nascent soul cultivator. Call for the great sages." One of the core formation cultivators was the first to recover. After he shouted, he slapped the back of his head and spat a green saber towards Han Li before flying away in a streak of green light. When the other spell warriors heard him, they also recovered from their shock. The other core formation cultivator released a fire-red trident and raised his hand, sending a voice transmission talisman through the sky. As for the Foundation establishment stage spell warriors, they all raised the formation flags in their hands and began to utter an incantation. Over 10 streaks of light shot out from the tips of the flags and formed a sea of flames burning around Han Li. Yi. Han Li felt greatly surprised that the spell warriors actually took the initiative to tie him down rather than flee. However, a trace of killing intent appeared on his face, and azure light twinkled to release several tens of azure bamboo cloudswarm soared from his sleeve. He struck them with a spell seal in a casual wave of his hand, and had each of these flying swords lightly tremble before immediately splitting into several copies of themselves, instantly surrounding Han Li in a dense screen of sword light. The sword chi surrounding him instantly soared with astonishing pressure. When the two core formation cultivators saw this, they were greatly alarmed, but they ordered their magic treasures to continue the attack regardless. Han Li coldly smiled and casually flicked two of his fingers, sending several streaks of swordlight to block the incoming saber and trident. In a bright flash of azure light, the two magic treasures were utterly suppressed by the swordlight and endlessly wailed as their spiritual light shrank. As for the sea of flame that rolled around him, the swordlight surrounding his body dispelled the flames whenever they grew near. Since he didn't have the time to further place with these spell warriors, Han Li had no intention of holding back. With a single command, the 100 streaks of swordlight brightly shined and simultaneously launched towards each of the spell warriors nearby. Although the Foundation establishment spell warriors raised the formation flags in attempt to block the attack, they were completely shredded without resistance. When the core formation spell warriors saw the swordlight fly towards them, blood drained from their faces. They possessed neither the courage nor recklessness to receive such a powerful attack, and hastily fled in streaks of light. When Han Li saw this, a cold glint appeared in his eyes. He formed an incantation gesture with his hands, and two swordlights masses of swordlights chased after them. With a series of rings, they bonded together and increased in speed. Just as the two Mulan spell warriors flew 50 meters away, swordlight had already enveloped them. Despite their greatest efforts to protect themselves and the various techniques they released, the azure light instantly shattered everything that protected them. Without even scream, the swordlight split their bodies into countless pieces, shattering apart even their primal souls. As Han Li killed them with ease, a violent roar came from up above him. A blinding yellow light soon followed, pouncing towards him at great speed. With a change of expression, Han Li instantly unfolded the thunderstorm wings and disappeared in a flash of silver light. When the silhouette in the yellow light saw this, he couldn't help but slow down and come to a stop, revealing a beardless old man who wore yellow clothes. Although he wore an expression of fury, bewilderment also appeared on his face. He was a Mulan sage who had been battling against a heavenly south nascent soul cultivator when he suddenly received a voice transmission from a clan member. He immediately disengaged from the fight and quickly flew towards the sender, only to see two of his relatives exterminated by azure swordlight. One of them had even been his succeeding disciple, his own nephew. However, Han Li had quickly disappeared from sight. Alarmed by the sight, he quickly recalled a particularly fearsome heavenly south cultivator, and he restrained his hatred only to sweep his spiritual sense around him. In the following moment, silver light flashed behind him, and Han Li came into existence once more. Die! The old man quickly turned around as soon as he sensed him and raised his hand, releasing a cubic magic treasure towards Han Li. As it flew, it brilliantly glowed in yellow light, instantly turning into a huge brick that was over 40 meters large, carrying a fearful momentum as it screamed through the air. With an expressionless face, Han Li raised his hand, releasing a blue light from his sleeve. In the blink of an eye, it expanded to become a huge shield and received the strike from the huge brick. Bang! Yellow and blue light intertwined as the brick, and the shield remained at a standstill. When Han Li saw the shield fall back towards him, he calmly pointed at it, and in a flash of blue light it came to a sudden stop. Then, the huge brick circled around the shield and smashed towards Han Li. Han Li coldly smiled and disappeared once more in a flash of silver light. The yellow-robed old man was alarmed by this and raised his hand without another thought, summoning a small purple flag into his hand. It quickly transformed into a purple cloud that surrounded his body. In that same moment, the old man heard thunder coming from his left. As soon as Han Li appeared, he opened his mouth and spat a small sword towards the purple cloud. An instant later, a layer of deep blue flame emerged from within it. When the old man saw the blue flames on top of the sword, he lost his composure and wore a face full of terror. His body instantly blurred 3 meters away in an attempt to dodge the sword. But against his complete expectations, a woman suddenly appeared behind him as if she had already anticipated where he would dodge. She raised her hand and released an azure ball that struck at the spell warrior like a bolt of lightning. The woman appeared without a trace, like a ghost. It was as if Han Li coordinated with this woman to perform a precise and incisive strike. Even with such skilled execution, the old man was able to see this coming through his spiritual sense. But at such a short distance, he was unable to dodge. His only choice was to surge the entirety of his magic power into the purple cloud covering his body. He was somewhat confident in the treasure that formed from the transformed purple cloud. A huge explosion sounded out as golden and azure light brilliant flashed. The purple cloud had crumpled in the exchange, and the old man within was in a pathetic shape. Half of his body was gone, and the remaining half was engulfed in azure flames. Overwhelmed with disbelief and furious alarm, resentment appeared on the old man's face as he gritted his teeth. With a boom, body combusted, and a blinding streak of yellow light flew through the skies, revealing an inch-large nascent soul with the exact same face as the old man. Seeing the circumstances were far from good, he decisively anticipated to abandon his body and flew out as a nascent soul in a vain attempt to flee. However, Han Li had already anticipated this. Just as the old man's nascent soul attempted to escape, he disappeared in a flash of silver light and blocked the nascent soul's escape path. He waved his hand, summoning a golden net from his hand in a clang of thunder. In that same moment, a small sword covered in blue flame shot out from his sleeve as well. The nascent soul wore a face of terror upon the sight of Han Li and spat out an inch-large bowl in its panic. The sparkling silver bowl charged forward to meet the oncoming golden net, and before they made contact, the old man's nascent soul caused it to rupture with a spell seal. In a burst of silver light, countless fragments shot at the lightning net, faintly shaking it upon impact. In that short moment of delay, the nascent soul employed an instantaneous movement technique. In a flash of yellow light, the nascent soul disappeared without a trace, only to appear 100 meters away. It then disappeared from sight in a brilliant streak of yellow light. The golden net was a step too late and allowed the prey to escape. Han Li frowned and glanced in the direction the nascent soul had escaped, possessing no intention of chasing it. Such a wise and decisive character is rarely seen. In order to save his life, he actually destroyed his own personal magic treasure. A white-clothed woman suddenly appeared, holding the old man's storage pouch in her hand. Han Li gloomily snorted. A mere stroke of luck. With both the thunderstorm wings and the celestial ice flames, the Mulan spell warrior was as good as him. It seemed killing an off-guard high-grade spell warrior was harder than he thought. Han Li glanced at Silvermoon and said, "Regardless, it seems your movement technique is much more powerful than before. You are even able to conceal yourself a close distance away." Silvermoon smiled. The four-pupiled fox is truly adept as concealment techniques. With my recent advancements, I'll be able to easily attack them, given that Master is occupying their attention. Good, Han Li indifferently nodded. Although Silvermoon was only his tool spirit, she was also the only other person who knew of the secret of his small bottle. But at an unknown time, he faintly felt a veil of mystery shroud her. After a few more words with Silvermoon, Han Li turned his head to examine the battlefield. After further examining it, Han Li was able to see through the chaos. At the greatest heights of the sky, there were 6 late nascent soul cultivators battling. Excluding them, there were 3 sections of the battle. One was the small-scale skirmishes. Cultivators and spell warriors would head out in various sized groups spanning from several tens to even 1,000, and would fight at each other in close quarters. These cultivators and spell warriors were very adept at fighting in their groups. As a result, they were much stronger together than alone. Both sides found it difficult to eliminate one another, and they were stuck at a standstill. Additionally, they were battles where a few individuals fought against a crowd of enemies. These cultivators and spell warriors possessed superior cultivation. These battles were far more dangerous than the group battles. A single mistake could lead to death in both body and soul. Finally, there were those wielding unfathomable techniques and treasures as they stood in confrontation. The most eye-catching of them was a large black mist floating in the air, releasing sharp wails. Any spell warrior that was captured by the mist immediately fell from the sky as a corpse. Whenever it appears, the nearby spell warriors would always fearfully keep their distance. And behind the ghost mist, there would be several fearless spell warriors that continuously struck at the mist with wind and lightning attribute spell techniques and magic treasures. Each strike seemed to scatter a small portion of the mist. However, there were still people continuously waving their flag magic tools within the mist and summoning more mist. This left the Mulan spell warriors without a good plan to deal with it. In another area, there were a dozen nascent soul-grade cultivators that were currently engaged in a battle against a 300-meter-tall stone giant. It appeared to be made of ordinary stone, but not only was its figure large, but a few small stones would rain down every time it moved its body. These cultivators didn't dare to receive the giant's attack even under the protection of the spell formations. Additionally, there were several spell warriors standing on top of its head and shoulders. They were assisting the giant with their own magic treasures. There were also a few cultivators and spell warriors that were engaged in a battle using magnificent treasures, each possessing power far beyond ordinary ancient treasures. These sect and tribe protecting treasures have greatly opened Han Li's horizons. Although Han Li emerged from the blood barrier, he remained idle as he observed the nearby fights due to the chaos. He was about a kilometer away from the nearest battles, but even so, two Mulan sages emerged from the fray and flew towards Han Li with overbearing momentum. Seeing Han Li ruthlessly dispatch of a similarly ranked spell warrior in an instant, the two had no certainty of victory. However, they couldn't allow this nascent soul cultivator to reign free, or the damage he will cause will be far too great. "Come," Han Li coldly ordered Silvermoon. He then flew towards a neighboring blood barrier. When Silvermoon saw this, she wore a strange smile as she chased after him. An azure streak of light appeared above the blood-red barrier and was soon struck by a lightning bead. Afterwards, Han Li disappeared once more in front of another blood barrier. Han Li planned to free these other nascent soul cultivators before planning what to do. A huge explosion sounded out, along with a streak of scarlet light flying out from the gap in the blood barrier. With a series of laughter, the freed man said, "I, Shattered Soul, cannot thank you enough for your assistance." The scarlet light disappeared to reveal a gray-robed cultivator. Taoist Shattered Soul. Han Li was slightly surprised to see that this was the first person he rescued. "Fellow Taoist, block those two for me while I rescue the others." With a quick thought, Han Li immediately gave him a voice transmission. "Yi, so it turned out to be fellow Taoist Han. Your kindness cannot be thanked with words. Please allow me to deal with them." The gray-robed cultivator revealed shock upon seeing Han Li, but he soon agreed. In a streak of white light, he flew over to face the two Mulan sages. When Han Li saw this with his spiritual sense, he inwardly smiled and quickly flew over to another blood barrier. With a wave of his hand, another azure light was released. But at that moment, something unexpected had occurred. The top of the blood barrier flashed with gray light, revealing a large embroidered-robed man. He looked at the incoming lightning bead with a solemn expression. Han Li was shocked. How was this person able to conceal himself there without even the slightest trace? When Han Li swept his spiritual sense past this person, he couldn't help but reveal his alarm. With a sweep of his spiritual sense, Han Li found that the large embroidered-robed man actually possessed a late nascent soul cultivation. He was a Mulan divine sage. Wasn't it said that the Mulan only had 3 divine sages? Before Han Li could recover from his shock, the large embroidered-robed man had grabbed the air in the direction of the incoming lightning bead. In Han Li's alarm, he hastily pointed to the lightning bead and had it change direction, but it was too late. A large azure hand suddenly appeared and grabbed onto it with indomitable might, holding it firm in place. Han Li raised his brow and instantly formed an incantation gesture with his hands, detonating the lightning bead's restrictions. Gold and azure light ruptured from within the large hand, scattering both itself and the hand without a trace. The large embroidered-robed man coldly snorted, but with a flicker of azure light, his expression returned to normal. Han Li remained in place, staring at him in silence. The large embroidered-robed man watched him and asked, "Are you Han Li, the cultivator that wields the golden lightning bamboo?" Rather than answer, Han Li asked, "The Mulan should only have 3 divine sages. Who are you?" The large embroidered-robed man said in an indifferent tone, "Good. Since you know that I am a divine sage and you are able to remain calm, it seems you are the one that divine sage Zhang spoke of. My name is Tian Zhang, the 4th Mulan divine sage." The 4th Mulan sage. This is the first time I've ever heard of this. Regardless, that manifested hand of yours seems incapable of restraining that lightning of bead. It seems you haven't entered late nascent soul stage for long, and have yet to consolidate your cultivation. Han Li spoke without restraint as he stared at Tian Zhang. In that same moment, he casually pointed to the various sword lights in front of his body, gathering them together to form a sheet of azure light guarding him. "It's true that I've only entered late nascent soul stage for a few years, but do you think you can be a match for me? Your arrogance is quite great," Tian Zhang sneered. "If he were alone, that'd be the case, but I am also here," a woman suddenly spoke, and Han Li soon rejoiced. "Who are you?" In the spell warrior's surprise, a stern glint appeared in his eyes. "I didn't expect that after I hadn't seen you for 100 years, fellow Taoist Tian would actually enter late nascent soul stage. You've greatly surprised me. Let's see whether or not your abilities have grown." Soon after this was said, white light flashed to reveal a red-robed beauty floating in the air. She was coldly staring at Tian Zhang. When he saw her, his expression stirred. "So it was Lady Feng, but you came here by yourself. Aren't you afraid that something will happen to Long Han? You and your husband have always fought together." "No worries, my husband is being protected by over 1,000 cultivators. Even if you divine sages were to personally attack him, you wouldn't be able to touch him. That's why I came over to test the abilities of the 4th divine sage. Fellow Taoist Han, go ahead and rescue the others." Once this was said, she raised her arm and extended her fingers, summoning a bottle of crystalline flames into her palm. Before she even began to cast her techniques, the bottle was already shining with red light as a raging flame flourished within it. The fire spirit bottle. Tian Zhang wore a grave expression. As for Han Li, he flew away in a streak of azure light after hearing her. Tian Zhang's expression grew solemn, and he tossed a spirit beast pouch into the air. In a flash of rainbow light, the pouch released 2 identical winged beasts. They had an azure eagle's body and tiger heads. "Heavenly tigers." Han Li was alarmed by the beast's appearance and couldn't help but shout out their name. It was an extremely rare flying beast located in the Mulan Plains. It was capable of both wind and earth attribute magic techniques and was incredibly difficult to deal with. Although the 2 of them only possessed late core formation cultivation, they weren't to be underestimated. At that moment, the 2 heavenly tigers roared, unfolding their wings. In a flash of azure light, they disappeared and reappeared near Han Li, glaring at him as if he were their prey. At that moment, the light surrounding his body disappeared and he came to a sudden stop. Instant movement, Han Li inwardly cursed. He had long heard of demon beasts capable of instantaneous movement, but he didn't expect it to be true. It won't be easy to break free of these 2 beasts. Tian Zhang didn't stop with the 2 demon beasts. In a blur, he created an identical doppelganger of himself, and it began to move as if it were true to life. The only difference was that the doppelganger was completely enveloped in a screen of azure light, and his appearance was brimming with dazzling light as if he were a hollow image. "External incarnation," Lady Feng shouted in alarm, a strange expression on her face. It came as no surprise that he was capable of an external incarnation, but she hadn't seen one so strange before. The azure light doppelganger quickly shot towards Han Li without any obstruction from Lady Feng. At that moment, she was fully occupied with Tian Zhang. After Tian Zhang spat out a sparkling rainbow wheel, he said, "This way, I'll be able to properly test the might of the both of you." With that said, he pointed to the colorful wheel, causing it to fly over to Lady Feng as a rainbow mist. When she saw this, she solemnly struck the fire spirit bottle with a spell seal. The bottle trembled for a moment before red light flourished from within, releasing countless threads of raging flame. These flames appeared completely unordinary and moved as if they were alive. One moment they were scattered, while in another they were together. But then the flames roiled, transforming into several huge crimson snakes before rushing to meet the rainbow light mist. Hearing an explosion nearby, Han Li immediately knew that Tian Zhang and Lady Feng have already begun to fight without having to look, not that he could. He was watching the 2 heavenly tigers that were glaring at him as well as the azure doppelganger. He wouldn't be able to free the other cultivators like this. With the two famous characters battling behind him, it seemed there would be no further attention spared on this part of the battlefield. Having thought that, he gave several lightning beads to Silvermoon so that she could sneak off to free the other cultivators, but there wasn't any opportunity for that now. He would have to first defeat the three opponents in front of him before he could consider other matters. With that thought, Han Li reached for his waist and released his own spirit beast pouch, summoning a large swarm of glistening gold-devouring beetles. They formed a large revolving cloud above him. Han Li clutched a hand incantation and disappeared into the beetle swarm. Then, with a loud buzz, azure light flashes several times from within, splitting the golden swarm into 3 divisions, each of them rushing towards a different enemy. Gold-devouring beetles. If they were fully mature, I might have had something to fear. The azure light doppelganger coldly snorted and spoke with a voice similar to Tianzhong's. As for the 2 heavenly tigers, they spread their wings upon seeing the gold-devouring beetles and retreated 70 meters away, revealing an expression of fear. At that moment, the azure doppelganger opened his mouth, releasing 3 bowl-thick beams of light towards each mass of gold-devouring beetles. With each beam, the azure light doppelganger turned a fraction darker. It even appeared a few inches shorter as a result. The 3 beams of light extremely quick and accurately struck each of the beetle swarms. With each flash of azure light, a 3-meter-wide sphere of azure light appeared, trapping each of the 3 clouds of beetles. In his alarm, Han Li pointed to the 3 swarms, having them each line the walls of the barrier in an attempt to devour them. But a short moment later, Han Li's expression grew unsightly. The barrier was exceptionally durable, and the gold-devouring beetles were slow in breaking it down. Since the 3 azure light barriers were all made of pure wood attribute spirit chi, it could trap the gold-devouring beetles for quite a while. With the combined abilities of the azure doppelganger's restriction abilities and the heavenly tiger's instantaneous movement, Han Li sensed this battle would be difficult to deal with. Could it be that the 4th divine sage was prepared to deal with him? As Han Li pondered about this, he felt a sense of dread. His guesses weren't far from the truth. When the Mulin's higher echelon had discussed the matter, they had given the task of killing Han Li over to Tianzhong. As a result, Divine Sage Zhu and the others had given him the Heavenly Tiger along with several other treasures capable of restraining Han Li. When the battle started, the Mulin hadn't anticipated that Han Li would join the wagered battles. As such, Divine Sage Tianzhong had tossed the matter to the back of his mind. But when Han Li reappeared, exterminating a group of spell warriors in the body of a sage, Tianzhong immediately noticed Han Li. Regardless of whether he was being blocked from rescuing the other trapped cultivators or being killed to fulfill the yin-sifting sex exchange, Han Li had no choice but to fight. But he also didn't expect that Long Han would risk sending his wife Feng Bing to assist Han Li once he noticed that Han Li broke free. If Han Li truly managed to save the trapped cultivators, the war would shift in the Heavenly South's favor. Seeing that the gold-devouring beetles had yet to make any progress in escaping, Han Li was filled with gloom. Before he could do anything else, the 2 heavenly tigers regained their courage upon seeing the gold-devouring beetles be restrained. In a series of azure flashes, the 2 spirit beasts disappeared from sight. Han Li coldly smiled in response and flung his sleeve, summoning a blue shield in front of him. At that same moment, he pointed to the swarm of swords in front of him. They surged with sword chi and began to revolve around Han Li, forming an impenetrable barrier. Soon, azure light flashed next to Han Li, revealing the 2 heavenly tigers. They opened their mouths and each spat out a blinding orb of light. Han Li wore a stern expression upon seeing the attack and had his swordlights part into 2 to meet the incoming orbs of light. 2 muffled explosions sounded out as the swordlights easily shattered the orbs of light. Afterwards, they swept their way to the 2 spirit beasts. When the heavenly tigers saw this, cunning shined from their eyes before they teleported a distance away. In his fury, Han Li was about to command the swordlight to pursue them, but the azure doppelganger suddenly attacked. Just as Han Li's battle with the doppelganger continued, both Long Han and the shriveled old spell warrior gave the command for their armies to unleash their killing maneuvers. 7 white-haired nascent soul cultivators flew out from behind Long Han with a calm expression, each of them wielding an ancient treasure. As for the spell warriors, a troop of nascent soul spell warriors flew out, the woman surnamed Le amongst their ranks. Under the shriveled old spell warrior's signal, she carefully took out a bronze lantern from her storage pouch and held it in her hand. The woman surnamed Le sent the ancient lantern into the sky and released a trace of white nascent flame from her mouth, lighting the ancient lantern. With both hands forming an incantation gesture in the shape of a lotus flower, She muttered a cryptic incantation, summoning a white lotus beneath her as it slowly blossomed. It was done with such grace that she appeared otherworldly. Her incantation was filled with an indescribably ancient aura. Then, with a tremble from the bronze lantern, mirages suddenly emerged from the lamp, forming 8 identical copies of itself. They then began to revolve around themselves before separating into 3 different circles that slowly circled around each other. The woman's surname flicked her finger, striking each of the ancient lanterns with various spell seals. Azure light brightly shined, causing 9 flames to simultaneously float from the lanterns, and met at the center of them, turning into a head-sized azure flame. The woman then spat out a mist of blood essence at the azure flames. The flames engulfed it, burning all the more brightly and vastly increasing in energy. A short moment later, a clear cry echoed and a foot-long azure bird emerged from the flames. The magnificent peacock appeared graceful with long azure feathers and a pair of jewel-like fire-red eyes. It arrogantly glanced around and tilted its neck when it saw the woman's surname beneath it. It began to speak to her in an ancient language from the time of antiquity. After deeply saluting at the bird 3 times, she replied to it through voice transmission. The shriveled old man watched this with a grave expression. Spell Warrior stopped talking in an ancient language and she flipped her hand, taking out a pink, fragrant pearl. When the azure peacock saw this, he revealed an expression of joy and sucked it into its mouth in an azure mist. With a crackle, a halo of light glowed azure peacock and azure flames roiled around it. As a sharp cry screamed through the air, it transformed into a huge bird of flames and unfolded its wings, engulfing 5 kilometers of the sky in fire attribute spiritual chi. The cultivators and spell warriors who used fire attribute techniques suddenly felt their power weaken, much to their alarm. The fire spirit chi in the air began to gather together like rivers to an ocean and poured into the azure bird's body. As a result, it began to expand, causing the azure flames on its body to grow all the brighter. All the cultivators within 5 kilometers stilled their hand and looked at the azure firebird with shock. The nearby temperatures had instantly risen. Even under the protection of magic tools, they felt as if they were beside a furnace. But when the spell warriors saw this, they revealed an expression of joy. "It's the sacred bird, Sadla has summoned it. This battle is ours," a few spell warriors shouted out with loud voices. Soon, they began to launch frantic attacks at the cultivators with great excitement. The shriveled old man wore a rare smile upon seeing the might of the sacred bird. When the black-robed woman from the Yin-sifting sect saw the azure peacock, a strange expression flickered from her face. She then said, "Only a sacred bird at deity transformation stage is able to control the fire spirits of heaven and earth. It is no wonder it is your most valued weapon. However, your sacred bird may be powerful, but when it emerged it was only at early nascent soul stage, and it was only able to barely ascend to late nascent soul stage after absorbing all that fire spirit chi. That should be a doppelganger of sorts. Else, the Mulan definitely wouldn't have lost so much land against the soaring tribes." After glancing at the black-robed woman, the shriveled old man calmly replied, "Lady Lu is no ordinary character, I see. The sacred bird's true body isn't present, but that is only a small matter. Even late nascent soul cultivators are no match against it." The black-robed woman nodded. "That's right. Being able to absorb so much worldly spiritual power is something only deity transformation stage beings can do. But just this ability alone already puts it in an invincible position." The shriveled old man chuckled and didn't reply. As for the 7 white-clothed old men, just as they used their various ancient treasures to strike the spell warriors, they spotted the huge bird within an azure sun and were dumbstruck. The gray-robed old man in charge wore a grim expression and said, "Not good. That demon beast isn't something that ordinary cultivators can withstand. We must block it." Another old man responded with a lively tone, "Then what are we waiting for him? Let's use the 7 treasures of great truths to kill them. That demon bird isn't something from this world. We cannot allow it to cast any spells." Soon after, he transformed into a streak of yellow light and flew straight towards the azure sun. When the others saw him, they immediately followed his lead. As for their leader, the gray-robed old man, he appeared hesitant but followed after them as well after a sigh. When the 7 cultivators approached the azure sun, the Mulan sacred beast had already finished absorbing the fire spirit chi nearby, and its body grew to over 80 meters tall. It glanced down at the several cultivators with an entirely hostile expression. With a malicious glint in its eyes, it unfurled its wings and launched a barrage of fist-sized azure fireballs towards the 7. Before the 7 old men could begin their attack, they felt a wave of warm wind. Their bodies were immediately dry, but they felt their hearts tremble. Under the vast barrage azure fireballs, the old man with long eyebrows slapped his storage pouch and flung a crystalline ice net towards the fireballs. In a flash of white light, all of the fireballs had been captured by it. When the long-eyebrowed old man saw this, he smiled, but soon his complexion paled. The ice net ruptured only after a moment, thoroughly dissolved by the azure flames that it held. In that time, the fireballs transformed into a pillar of flame and shot to the men with overbearing momentum. Go! The old man in the lead swiftly released his own magic treasures, a milky white ancient mirror. It flew out and circled once before releasing a white barrier that staved back the azure flames. But when the others saw the ice net dissolve, they felt their breaths turn cold. They knew that common magic tools wouldn't prove useful against an azure flame. Quickly use the devil isolating formation. Seal that demon bird, the leading old man shouted. When the other cultivators heard this, they hastily commanded their ancient treasures. A red club, yellow halberd, medallion, small cauldron, jade fan, and a scepter soared into the sky, surrounding the huge bird. Then, after a series of clear rings, the ancient mirror transformed into a rainbow, raising a rainbow barrier that not only withstood the azure flames but also trapped the huge bird. When the azure bird saw this, its eyes were filled with fury. It pecked downward, its beak surrounded by a dense layer of azure radiance. An instant later, a tall old man suddenly felt his medallion treasure tremble. With a huge bang, it was struck back and flew straight towards him. In his alarm, he hurriedly struck his medallion with several spell seals in an attempt to stop its momentum. But the medallion only paused for just a moment before ruthlessly continuing onward towards the old man. But just as it was about to strike him, a silhouette suddenly blurred behind him and placed his hands on his shoulders, pouring in a huge amount of spiritual chi into his body. Quickly cast the technique. I'll lend you my strength. The leading old man spoke with a cold voice, rousing the tall old man's spirits. In a single breath, the tall old man cast 5 spell seals and stopped the medallion from coming any closer. The two couldn't help but sigh with relief, having regained control of it. As this occurred, dread filled the hearts of the other old men. They became more vigilant and hurriedly exerted the utmost power of their ancient treasures. Various colored light intertwined and combined together to block the strikes from the huge bird's light-clad beak. Not far away, Spell Warrior glanced at the scene and turned her head around to look at the ancient lantern. After a moment of hesitation, she remained still. Until the lantern oil fully burned, she needed to guard it and couldn't eliminate the cultivators attacking the sacred bird. Leaving the lantern alone would prove disastrous. The shriveled old Spell Warrior revealed surprise when he saw the old cultivators tying down the sacred bird, but he didn't seem to pay it any mind. He wasn't worried about the bird deity that they had worshipped with tens of thousands of years. It clearly had the advantage. Regardless of how powerful those 7 magic treasures may be, they aren't any match for the sacred bird. It would definitely be able to strike down the 7 cultivators before the lantern oil was finished burning. These 7 should be the ultimate killers of the heavenly south. With that thought, the shriveled old Spell Warrior turned his eyes to glance at Long Han, who was standing in front of an army of over 1,000 cultivators with a sullen expression. I didn't expect for the Mulan of being capable of summoning such a powerful demon bird. This will be troublesome. Long Han muttered to himself with a sullen expression. Then with a loud voice, he coldly said, quickly, release the spirit phantoms. Take advantage of moments the 7 great truths cultivators are giving us and use them to great effect. Soon after he gave the order, several tens of birds shining with pitch-black light flew out from the cultivator army. Additionally, there were several cultivators who took out a spirit talisman from their storage pouch and slapped it on a statue. In a flash of green light, the spirit talisman merged into the status, and the cultivators immediately sat on the ground, motionless. A short moment later, the eyes of the pitch-black phantom birds shined with a chilling blue light, and they extended their claws as much as they could before flying down to the spell warriors below. As for the cultivators who slapped the talismans on the statue, their heads began to roll as if they fell asleep. When the shriveled old man saw this, a trace of mockery appeared on his face. He turned around to the black-robed woman and politely said, "The time has come for your esteemed self to give them the lethal blow. Lady Lu, release your copper-armored corpses. We can seize victory now." Satisfaction appeared on the shriveled old man's face. The black-robed woman's eyes twinkled for a moment before she calmly said, "Brother Zhu, don't be hastily. Let's wait a moment more. A majority of my sect's copper-armored corpses possess Foundation establishment cultivation. So long as we wait until the Heavenly South cultivators exhausted their strength, the corpses will be able to rout them. After frowning a moment, he hesitated before nodding. Fine, so long as you don't change your mind, we can wait a little bit more. He felt her words felt a bit of reason. At that moment, Hanli felt particularly gloomy. Half of it was due to the two heavenly tigers' cunning. They stuck to him like tar, but they didn't dare to face him on a one-on-one battle. They merely harassed him at close range. Not long after, he deliberately left an opening and managed to bait one of the beasts into attacking him. As a result of fierce retaliation, Hanli cleaved one of the demon beast's claws in half. But from then on, the two demon beasts switched to continue attacking him from a distance using light orbs, rather than staying close to him. But every time that Hanli attempted to shake them off with his thunderstorm wings, the demon beasts immediately chased after him and bothered him without end. As for the other reason for his gloominess, it was the azure light doppelganger. It seemed to be formed out of pure wood spirit chi and couldn't be harmed by the bamboo cloudswarm swords. Regardless of how much sword chi struck his body, it would scatter and become one with him. This was the first time Hanli had encountered such a situation. It proved rather eye-opening. When Hanli saw this, he used the celestial ice flames to attack, but he didn't expect that the azure doppelganger would spit out a blue bowl that was capable of absorbing the flames. This had caused a cold tremble down Hanli's back. Fortunately, as he had already refined the celestial ice flames to be one with his body, he was able to will the flames to struggle free from the bowl and return back into his body. Since the amount of ice flames refined in his body wasn't much, even the loss of a slight sliver was significant. As a result, Hanli didn't dare to use the purple apex flames. As for the thousand-fold mountain and his other treasures, Hanli used them to little effect before putting them away. Although the azure doppelganger wasn't unkillable, as each wound would cause its light to dim and its figure to grow shorter, it wasn't an enemy that he could deal with in a short amount of time. Fortunately, it didn't have any particularly vicious attacks and magic treasures. It was only capable of attacking him with threads of azure chi, something that Hanli could easily deal with. It seemed that this doppelganger only wished to tie him down. As for the red-clothed woman, Feng Bing, despite being at the peak of mid-nascent soul stage, her strength was still vastly lacking as she fought against the late-nascent soul stage spell warrior. She used her techniques and abilities to their greatest extent, but she still found herself at a disadvantage. The fourth divine sage would occasionally glance over at Hanli, causing him to feel greatly uneasy, as if there were needles bearing into his back. At that moment, the seven great truths cultivators were only barely able to withstand the attacks of the Mulan's sacred bird. Hanli's heart sank at the sight. As of current, their only hope of victory would be freeing the cultivators trapped by the blood barrier. Otherwise, they would have no chance of recovering their momentum, and they would be forced to retreat in a massive defeat. After a moment of thought, Hanli resolved himself, unwilling to allow the standstill to continue. He immediately released several sword streaks in order to repel the heavenly tigers for a moment. He then slapped his storage pouch and took out a wooden box with talismans sealed all over it. When the doppelganger saw this, he yelped in surprise and promptly attacked Hanli in a barrage of wood spirit threads. Hanli's figure blurred. With a quick command, his body glowed with swordlight and cut down the attacking threads. Azure light then flashed from the wooden box, and the talisman seals were released. A streak of crimson light flew out from the box and revolved once in Hanli's palm. It was the spirit subjugation talisman. Hanli slapped the crimson talisman on his body without the slightest hesitation, and it disappeared in a flash of crimson light. Azure light glowed from Hanli's face as he took a deep breath, summoning a huge flood dragon phantom in front of him. It was over 30 meters large and had a body of crimson, appearing exactly the same as the Grade 8 venomous flood dragon. The flood dragon coiled above Hanli before releasing a sky-shaking roar, shaking the hearts of all the cultivators nearby, momentarily putting a stop to the fighting from the shock. When Tianzhong saw this, he frowned and a solemn expression appeared on his face. As for Feng Bing, her eyes twinkled as if looking forward to its performance. With the roar finished, the flood dragon charged towards the sky in a spiral, and its figure quickly shrank before burrowing itself into Hanli's body without a trace. At that moment, Hanli felt a wave of scorching heat in his body as the small image of a flood dragon was burned into his back, glowing with crimson light. At that moment, crimson light pulsed from Hanli's body as fingernail-sized crimson scales began to emerge one by one, glistening with light. Then, with a sharp pain from his head, An exquisite, bright flood dragon horn emerged with 10 sharp points. When Han Li felt the astonishing spiritual qi emitting from his body, he found himself in awe. Although the spirit subjugation talisman had mentioned its effects slightly, that was capable of refining a demon soul's cultivation and taking it into one's body to vastly increase their cultivation. It had never mentioned that the user would have their body become semi-demonic. Of course, this kind of demon transformation was quite weaker than a spirit-fused technique. At the very least, he didn't grow a fang and a flood dragon tail. Rather, it strongly resembled man Huzi, heaven-bearing devil arts. Han Li sighed and gently stroked his horn without speaking a word. Of course, Han Li couldn't have known that the founder of this talisman had created the talisman to make up for the flaws of the spirit-fused technique. Not only was the user now able to retain his original consciousness, but they wouldn't overdraft their vitality and caused harm to their lifespan. The sole flaw was that it was incredibly difficult to refine. In this world, most cultivators wouldn't even have the opportunity to spot a grade 8 demon beast, let alone acquire grade 8 demon souls. Additionally, the manifested demon soul would have to be refined, else it would bring about harm. Although low-grade demon souls could also be refined into a spirit-subjugating talisman, the demonic qi of their souls would be too impure. Once it was turned into a talisman, it would display the same effects as the spirit-fused technique, so it was particularly stressed that only demon souls at grade 8 and higher could be used to refine a spirit subjugation talisman. Although Han Li was somewhat surprised, he felt his cultivation suddenly rise to the peak of early nascent soul stage. The talisman's effects were truly effective. Additionally, the two heavenly tigers felt rather uneasy from the flood dragon aura that Han Li's body emitted. But after the azure doppelganger shouted at them, the two heavenly tigers regained their calm. Han Li coldly smiled and he unfolded the thunderstorm wings, reappearing 30 meters away in a ring of thunder. When the two heavenly tigers saw this, they hastily chased after him in a flash of azure light. Soon after, they closely chased after Han Li and spat out several balls of light at him in succession. A cold glint flickered from his eyes and thunder rang from his wings once more. He suddenly disappeared for a moment before reappearing behind the demon beast. At that moment, the other demon beast spouted out a barrage of balls of light. It intended on forcing Han Li to block the attack and give its companion the opportunity to escape. But with his increased cultivation, Han Li no longer felt the need to control the sword light. With crimson azure light shining from his body, he took the risk to have his body's spiritual qi block the attacks. Then in a blur, he extended his arm, swiping it in an azure streak with otherworldly speed and momentum. In the heavenly tiger's shock, it wasn't able to use instantaneous movement. It was only able to spit out its azure yellow demon core in an attempt to block the attack. When the azure doppelganger saw this, he flew forward with alarm and spread out his arms, releasing a dense barrage of azure threads towards Han Li. In a series of huge rumbles, the balls of light exploded upon impact with Han Li's body, but it merely caused his body to sway. He didn't suffer any damage in the slightest. Rather, his full-powered sword wing not only cleaved the demon core into two, but also the heavenly tiger as well. Without instantaneous movement, the beast was no match for Han Li. In that moment, the azure doppelganger's attack had wrapped around Han Li, but crimson light flashed from his body, turning the azure threads black and causing them to fade away. The flood dragon poison. Han Li was delighted. He had only blocked the azure threads with his body's spirit light and was able to easily dissolve them. He hadn't used any techniques. The azure doppelganger revealed fear at the sight. A mournful howl roared through the air. When the remaining heavenly tiger saw that its companion was slain, it was filled with violent fury. In a flash of azure light, it directly teleported to Han Li's side and swung its foot-long, light-clad claws as if it had lost itself to rage. Han Li remained expressionless and raised his scale-covered claw. Crimson light flourished all around it and directly met the heavenly tiger's claw. Bang! Han Li's claw was able to easily strike away the heavenly tiger's swipe, and in a blur, he was able to easily pierce into the heavenly tiger's body with his other arm. He took out an azure yellow demon core in his claw, and the heavenly tiger's corpse fell to the ground. With the increased cultivation from the spirit subjugation talisman, Han Li was able to kill the two beasts in succession in mere seconds. This display of might had caused the azure doppelganger to hesitate and release Han Li from further pursuit. Then in another blur, Han Li faced the azure doppelganger and coldly examined it. As this occurred, Tianzhong had clearly seen this, arousing furious alarm in his heart. He commanded his rainbow wheel to furiously attack the beautiful woman before he disappeared, abandoning the fight and flying straight towards Han Li instead. But just as this occurred, a muffled explosion sounded out, and a nearby crimson barrier suddenly ruptured, a glacial mist madly rushing out from the opening. A silver streak flew out amidst it and spiraled once around in the air before stopping near Han Li. Manhuzi was a renowned devil Dao cultivators in the scattered star seas, last seen in Heaven Void Hall. The light faded away to reveal a beautiful white-clothed woman. She was the woman surnamed Bai who seemed to have a past with Master Sunreach. As she expressionlessly glanced around in the air, she saw Han Li and Feng Bing, causing her expression to stir. The sudden appearance of this woman caused Tianzhong to unconsciously pause in the air, and his expression to waver. When Feng Bing saw Cultivator Bai break out from the blood barrier, she shouted with roused spirits, "Fellow Taoist Bai, you've come at a great time. This is the fourth Mulan divine sage. Quickly help me tie him down so fellow Taoist Han can free the others." The woman surnamed Bai icily glanced at Tianzhong and she maliciously said, "The fourth divine sage, so you had a hand in this trick as well. I didn't think that apart from that youngster, that there would be someone else able to break through the blood barrier as well. It seems those from the Yin sifting sect are unreliable." Tianzhong didn't respond to Cultivator Bai's question and instead muttered to himself instead, "You're courting death." Seeing that she was ignored, Cultivator Bai's complexion grew ashen with fury. She formed an incantation seal with her hands and gathered together a vast, shining white mist, launching it towards the divine sage with astonishing momentum. When Feng Bing saw this, she pointed to the fire spirit bottle and launched an attack from the other side. Han Li no longer hesitated and spread his wings once more, reappearing near another blood barrier. Although he felt certain that he could kill the Azure Doppelganger given the power of the Spirit Subjugation Talisman, it was more important to free the cultivators for the sake of the war. With the blood barrier before him, Han Li summoned a lightning bead into his hand with a wave of his hand. "Be careful, master." Just as Han Li was about to throw out the lightning bead, he suddenly heard Silvermoon from the back of his mind. Han Li's heart trembled, and he instantly tossed out the lightning bead, striking down at the blood barrier in a fierce streak of azure light. But in that same moment, a head-sized ball of azure flames had moved to intercept him. With an expression of shock, he saw the ball of flames swiftly strike at the lightning bead. With a pop, the lightning bead was silently engulfed by the flames, and with a series of shifting flames, it turned into a foot-long azure firebird that floated in the air. Han Li wore a stern expression at the sight, and he formed a hand incantation, detonating the lightning bead within the firebird's body. However, the bird's body merely swayed from the explosion and suffered no true damage. It merely stared at Han Li with a slightly swollen body. When Han Li saw this, he was greatly alarmed and looked up to see a series of azure fireballs approaching him from the direction of the Mulan sacred bird. When they drew near the crimson barriers, they transformed into azure firebirds in the blink of an eye, and they each began to surround the blood barriers. At that moment, Han Li realized the firebirds were most likely related to the sacred bird. It is no wonder why the lightning beads had strengthened them, as they were formed from the lantern flames to begin with. Not far from the sacred bird, Spell Warrior Lo was coldly staring at Han Li. The two's gazes met. Now realizing that the sacred bird had to do with her, he grew furious. However, when Han Li saw the 9 ancient lanterns floating at her side, Han Li couldn't help but narrow his eyes, pondering as he calmly gazed at the blazing flames. As for the azure firebirds, they didn't have any intention of attacking him. They merely circled around the blood barriers. At that moment, Silvermoon appeared at Han Li's side in a flash of white light. With an apologetic tone, Silvermoon said, "Master, please forgive me for being of no use during your previous battle. Those heavenly tigers were far too intelligent. I would have been found out if I drew too close of them." "Enough, you've done all you could." Han Li shook his head and calmly said, "Nevertheless, you should take these 2 lightning beads. See whether or not you can sneak past them and rescue the cultivators inside. Use the 2 of them and see if you can free even one." Silvermoon received the 2 lightning beads and respectfully said, "This servant will do her utmost." She then concealed herself in a flash of white light. Han Li then turned around and glanced in the direction of Tianzhong. Scarlet flames and icy white mist were intertwined as rainbow light occasionally flashed from within. At the moment, it was difficult to say who held the advantage. As for the Azure Doppelganger, it had disappeared at an unknown time, unknown as to whether it was fighting within him or if Tianzhong had withdrawn it, relieved at the fact the sacred bird had personally assisted him. Han Li shook his head and then glanced at the tensome azure firebirds with a fierce intensity. Crimson azure light shining from his body, he raised both of his hands and summoned the blue light shield. Afterwards, he formed a hand incantation and enlarged the shield, blocking his front as he summoned another lightning bead with the flip of his hand. Then, with claps of thunder from behind him, Han Li blurred and reappeared 40 meters in the air. Having yet to throw the lightning bead in his hand, the firebirds all around him shot towards him. In the blink of an eye, a shroud of azure flame appeared in the air, submerging Han Li within it. At that moment, Long Han's gaze moved away from Han Li. He had originally hoped that Han Li would be enough to free the trapped cultivators and regain momentum over the battle. But when he saw the sacred bird release several firebirds towards Han Li, he grew sullen and knew that their chances weren't good. He then turned his gaze to the spell warriors in the distance, and he saw that, although the 7 Great Truths cultivators managed to hold down the azure demon fire from the Mulan's sacred bird, they clearly wouldn't last much longer. Although it only possessed late nascent soul cultivation, it had the abilities from deity transformation stage. Release the yin-yang devils. Tell them to not busy themselves with killing and have them deal with the ancient flames instead. With a sullen voice, Longhand released the last card he had hidden up his sleeve. Yes, a harmonious bond sect cultivator who had been waiting at his side immediately flew off to deliver the message. After an uproar, 2 eerie coffins, one black and one white, were summoned forth. 16 male and female disciples from the harmonious bond sect all sat down around the 2 coffins and began to cast incantations and spell seals, striking at the coffins with various spell seal and beginning the process of releasing the coffin seals. As the incantation continued, the talismans on top of the black-white coffin began to tremble, and the coffin thumped as if limbs were knocking against the wood from within. When Longhand heard this, he couldn't help but raise his brow. He had heard quite a bit about the harmonious bond sect's yin-yang devils. It is said that these 2 corpse devils were once a pair of Tao companion elders from a previous generation. They both possessed early nascent soul stage cultivation, but they had betrayed the harmonious bond sect for some reason or another, and turned to the path of the ghost Tao, transforming themselves into living corpses. Later, when the 2 made great sweeps in their cultivation, they wished to exterminate the harmonious bond sect, killing over 100 disciples before they were finally captured alive by several sect elders. By taking advantage of an ancient technique to erase their consciousness, they were refined into the legendary yin-yang corpse devils. It is said that the corpse devils were immensely powerful, even more powerful than when they were once alive. As these thoughts appeared in Longhand's mind, the sounds from the coffins grew louder and louder, with the talismans growing fewer with each spell seal that strikes it. As for the 32 harmonious bond sect disciples that surrounding the coffins, their faces grew more uneasy as their incantations continued, their gazes focused on the talismans remaining on the coffin. With a pop, the final 2 talismans flew off of the coffin, and the harmonious bond sect disciples immediately scattered from the scene. At that moment, an explosion occurred from the coffin, filling the air with a fishy scent with the appearance of 2 vague silhouettes, one black and one white. They shot out from the coffins and disappeared off into different directions. The slowest of the male and female disciples released a blood-curdling shriek. 2 people in Taoist robes had pounced on the 2 disciples and tore out their throats, drinking the blood essence that poured out. When the other harmonious bond sect cultivators saw this, they sighed with relief and stopped. As for the cultivators from the other sects, they couldn't help but reveal their shock. An old man with draped hair walked out from the sect division and calmly said, "Good. Since the devils have consumed the blood essence of a virgin male and female, they won't suddenly feed on any others." Afterwards, he raised his arms to the 2 silhouettes and revealed 2 green bronze plates engraved with talisman characters. The 2 plates then shot streaks of gray light towards the corpse devils' heads, embedding inside them. The 2 corpse devils trembled and ceased sucking up the blood. They slowly stood up and stiffly flew over to the front of the cultivator army. At that moment, their true appearance could be seen, arousing many cries of astonishment. The yin-yang corpse devils were actually a young man and woman, both possessing delicate appearances. The man had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, while the woman possessed an elegant dignity. But in contrast to their lifelike features, their eyes were completely lifeless. Were it not for the remnant blood still dripping from the corner of their mouths, they would have appeared to be a common pair of Tao companions. However, they released an indescribable odor of decay nearby them, bewildering anyone who smelled it. The old man with the draped hair poured spiritual power into the bronze plates, and suddenly, The gray light began to envelop the two corpse devils. They remained silent and still as the old man quickly chanted an incantation, the bronze plate in his hand slowly floating in the air. Suddenly, the old man struck the bronze plates with two spell seals, causing both of the bronze plates to emit thumb-thick beams of light into the foreheads of both of their foreheads. A radiant light suddenly shined from the two corpse devils' eyes. The old man with draped hair put away the bronze plates and pointed to the huge azure bird, commanding, "Go." The yin-yang devils turned their gaze and suddenly stood side by side before turning into a gust of green wind, a rotting stench left in their wake. It appeared they were heading in the direction of the Mulan sacred bird. The cultivators immediately sighed in relief. They felt more confident with these blood-sucking monsters at their front. The corpse devils' green winds appeared to travel slowly, but in reality, they were amazingly quick. In the blink of an eye, they had already traveled halfway and gradually disappeared from sight. The others glanced at this with astonishment, and they couldn't help but turn their gaze to draped-haired old man controlling the two corpses. He appeared entirely calm, much to the relief of the many cultivators watching him. On the spell warrior's side of the battlefield, the huge azure bird was calmly releasing its demon fire to rigidly suppress the seven great truths cultivators. Able to take advantage of the world's spiritual chi, the bird was able to easily gather all the fire spirit power within a 5-kilometer radius into its body, easily transforming it into azure demon flame without the need to consume spiritual power from its body. Additionally, as time went by, it was able to draw in even more fire spirit power. This was the difference between deity transformation stage and what is lower. It was for reasons like this that, whenever a deity transformation stage cultivator appeared in the heavenly south, they were able to sweep across the continent without fear of anything else. From the very beginning, the seven great truths cultivators were only able to tangle down the beast with the might of their magic treasures. But as time passed by, not only was the devil isolating formation broken, but the surging flames that were trapped had escaped as well. As of current, it took them all their might to preserve their own lives. It was then that the demon bird ceased its flame and bewilderedly glanced around as if it had felt something strange. With a sudden cry, the bird spread out its wings, and an azure ring of light surged around it, covering an area of over 300 meters. With a crackle, a nearly indiscernible cloud of green smoke appeared amidst the light. Afterwards, the yin-yang devils appeared from within. With their concealment broken, the two devils harshly shrieked and shuffled about before undergoing to transformation. With red hair and green skin, their bodies grew to 6 meters in height. Their fingers trembled, launching several tens of threads of gray light towards the huge bird. The azure bird paused before screeching in fury. When it saw the devil's attacks, it opened its mouth and shot out a pillar of azure flame from its mouth. At that same moment, it spread out its wings and engulfed its body in a storm of azure flames, sweeping up a 40-meter-tall wave of azure flame to the two devils. Through some unknown technique, the yin-yang devils were able to overcome this attack by emitting threads of undead chi, allowing them to withstand the attack of demon flames and continue their assault. With the focus from the sacred bird being taken off of the seven great truths cultivators, they were able to join their treasures together in renewed spirits and display their strength once more. Just as the two corpse devils and the seven great truths cultivators were dealing with the Mulan sacred bird, the two corpse devils suddenly flashed with gray light and darted behind the huge bird, making its way past the sea of flames and directly towards the ancient lanterns not far away. When Spell Warrior saw this, she calmly struck one of the lanterns with a spell seal, suddenly stirring the lanterns to release an ember of flame. In the blink of an eye, 9 embers began to twirl around one another before suddenly transforming into 9 azure firebirds. They spread their wings and met the two devils' charge. The two devils met them in a fierce display. Gray undead chi drifting from their mouths, their fingers turned into claws before tearing apart the firebirds as they blurred from sight, their claws pulsing with gray light. But in that moment of delay, the huge bird suddenly turned its head to the two corpse devils and spouted a huge azure cloud from its mouth, sweeping them inside it. In the blink of an eye, the yin-yang devils were caught inside another sea of flame. When the seven great truths cultivators saw this, their hearts sank. At that moment, the shriveled old spell warrior saw this in the distance and smiled before speaking to the black-robed woman. The woman then turned her eyes to the battlefield and nodded, noticing that both spell warriors and cultivators appeared equally exhausted. Her lips moved, giving the command. A group of black-robed men flew out from the spell warrior camp, arranged in a single row. each of them carrying 7 bulging bags at their waist. With this, the black-robed woman opened her mouth and spat out a small, exquisite flag. It was only 2 inches large and shined with faint black light, but as it traveled through the air, it expanded to the size of 3 meters. The woman coldly pointed at the treasure, and soon, the black flag trembled and shined with black light as it streaked through the sky, disappearing from sight in the blink of an eye. A short moment later, the entire battlefield was enveloped in a dark wind as black clouds began to cover the sky, spreading darkness throughout the battlefield. When the cultivators in battle saw this, they couldn't help but look up in alarm. With the sky blackened, the black-robed men tossed out the storage pouches from their waist. Incantation leaving their lips, dense black fogs and eerie winds spouted out from the bags. In the blink of an eye, the land was covered in a black mist with vague, shuffling silhouettes emerging from within it. Scales glittered from them as if they were armored troops. This astonishing scene was to the dread of the cultivators who watched it. Longhand in particularly had frowned tensely as he inwardly sighed. Soon the bags finished emitting the mist with armies slowly emerging from within. The silhouette's true appearance finally became clear. They were fleshless corpses armored in copper. Although these refined corpses swayed as they walked with their armor clanking as they moved, each of these corpses had eyes shining with green light, exposed fangs, and a cultivation at foundation establishment stage. There were even 3 larger corpse lords that possessed core formation cultivation, their shifting eyes displaying a deeper intelligence. A cultivator from behind Longhand screamed with alarm, "Copper-armored corpses! How can there be so many of them? There are thousands of them." Longhand coldly said, "It's nothing. With a devilish sect from the Jin Empire assisting them, these armored corpses come as no surprise. If this were the start of the battle, we would have nothing to fear. But now that we've exhausted ourselves with the spell warriors, the copper-armored corpses will certainly defeat us. All we can do is head out and deal with them." When the others heard this, they glanced at each other and bitterly smiled. Even if they were to leave their posts and attack, the spell warrior would release their reserves as well. The battle would be already lost. As for the 3 great heavenly south cultivators and the Mulan sages, the battle was yet to be concluded. The sounds of their battle could still be heard from up above. In this fierce battle, it was unknown which side had the upper hand. They couldn't be relied upon. Just as Longhand and these other cultivators found themselves in a moment of helplessness and were preparing themselves to fight, they suddenly heard explosive howls from a distance. Silver light shined upon the entire battlefield when a huge beast appeared amidst the light. A 70-meter-tall ape with hair as black as ink, fur as sharp as arrows, eyes as lit like crimson flames, and a horrendously shaped nose. When the huge ape appeared, it turned its head to look at the copper-armored corpses down below. It hammered its chest before excitedly roaring and smashing its limbs on the ground, chasing towards a nearby group of copper-armored corpses. When the copper-armored corpses saw the huge ape growing closer, they each rose into the air without warning and spouted threads of black chi, enveloping the ape in a huge black cloud. While the refined corpses didn't possess very high cultivation, when such a great number simultaneously spouted out undead chi, even a nascent soul cultivator wouldn't dare to receive the attack. However, the huge ape didn't have any intention of dodging out of the way. Instead, it snorted at the black chi and spouted a dense beam of yellow light from each nostril, transforming into a yellow cloud that swept away at the black mist with lightning speed. It was quickly absorbed before being absorbed back into the huge ape's mouth. As the refined corpses possessed little intelligence, they remained still as this happened. Taking advantage of this situation, the huge ape continuously snorted and yellow mist surged on, absorbing the black threads of chi into its folds. The undead chi from the refined corpses disappeared, and each of them fell to the ground, reverting back into ordinary corpses. As for the clouds of gray chi in the air, they had slowly scattered. A short moment later, several hundreds of the refined corpses had been swept clean by the huge ape. It then licked its lips and gazed at the other refined corpses with a trace of desire. The ordinary refined corpses knew no fear and remained motionless at the side. However, the 3-core formation stage corpse lords became restless at the sight, and their eyes revealed a trace of fear and hesitation. Both armies were in complete awe of the abilities that the huge ape had displayed. The black-robed woman was particularly aghast. She gave the shriveled old man a quick word before personally shooting towards the huge ape in a streak of yellow light. When she saw the huge ape open its mouth and was on the verge of releasing yellow light, she flusteredly waved her arm, forming a 10-meter-long blade of purple light that chopped down toward the huge ape. But before the blade could strike at the huge ape, thunder rang and silver light appeared. An azure-robed youth abruptly appeared on the huge ape's shoulder, and he also waved his arm, summoning forth a blue light shield in front of it. With a loud clank, blue and purple light intertwined. An instant later, the blue shield and purple blade recoiled from one another. The azure-robed stumbled, his face in shock. The youth glanced at the black-robed woman and indifferently asked, "A devil cultivator?" He then twisted his hands, summoned forth various-sized arcs of golden lightning all around him. They jumped all over his body, emitting a blinding golden light. Han Li had appeared. "Divine Devilbane lightning," the black-robed woman shouted in alarm. Just as she thought to retaliate in fury from having her attack countered, she suddenly saw the lightning emitting from Han Li's body, a net of crackling thunder rushing to envelop her. Horror on her face, her body transformed into smoke as she shot back, attempting to avoid the lightning at all costs. With an emotionless face, Han Li unfolded his wings and disappeared from sight. When she saw this, the black-robed woman immediately recalled what she had heard about Han Li and hastily formed an incantation gesture with her hands, her body of smoke blurring and shifting into 8 identical copies, each one standing side by side. Each of them appeared real and took actions of their own, splitting up and scattering in different directions in streaks of yellow light. It was unknown which copy was the true. In a flash of silver light, Han Li appeared where the woman original stood, thunder ringing behind him. He glanced at the scattered streaks of yellow light in a calm manner. There was even a trace of a sneer on his face. Spiritual power entering his eyes, blue light shined from deep within his pupils, activating the bright-sight spirit eyes. Han Li raised his head and peered into the distance. The silhouettes within the yellow light were all dim and possessed sparse spiritual chi. They were all fakes. Han Li's heart trembled, and he hastily looked around him to suddenly discover that a nearly invisible thread of smile was silently approaching him from behind. The woman had used an illusion technique to capture his attention, and decided to use this gap in attention to seize the opportunity to launch a surprise attack on him rather than escape. The woman was both capable and bold. Were it not for his bright-sight spirit eyes, he wouldn't have been able to detect her. The woman's evasion techniques are no less skillful than Silvermoon's. Spiritual sense wasn't enough to find any trace of her. Shocked to the core, Han Li silently turned around and flew straight towards the huge ape, as if he had no further intention to chase after the black-robed woman. The faint thread of smoke had already arrived about 10 meters away from Han Li. It paused, and the woman's body suddenly manifested in the air. An inch-long blade of yellow light shined from her hand in an attempt to strike Han Li from behind. From how it appeared, it seemed she was about to incisively strike at Han Li's heart. If her attack struck true, his body was certain to be destroyed. But in the moment the woman was about to strike, Han Li turned around in a blur, his eyes immediately locking onto her. He opened his mouth, shooting golden light from his mouth. Ah, the black-robed woman's face turned deathly pale, and she hastily attempted to dodge, but she was too late. She couldn't avoid the attack from such a close distance. Bang! A bolt of golden lightning shot out of Han Li's mouth and directly struck the woman's shoulder, filling the air with a burning scent. The woman screamed before falling down from the sky. Han Li flapped his wings, disappearing with thunder ringing behind him. Suddenly, Han Li reappeared behind the woman with a single hand enveloped in faint blue flames. He gently pressed it against her neck. Whoosh! A dense layer of blue ice covered her entire body, isolating her from any other sensation but the cold. She then continued to fall from the sky, clad in ice. Han Li motionlessly floated in the air, already prepared with a handful of lightning arcing from his hand. He released the lightning and caught the iced woman inside of it. Then, with a malicious glint from his eyes, golden light brilliantly shined around her iced figure, and in a series of explosions, the black-robed woman turned into specks of icy light before disappearing without a trace. The sole thing that remained in the lightning net was the woman's nascent soul. The nascent soul's complexion was deathly white, as if it held the divine Devilbane lightning in complete fear. Han Li glanced at her, and just as he was about to exterminate the nascent soul shrieked, "You cannot kill me. I am the Tao companion of the Jin Empire's sifting Yin sect master. If you kill me, my sect will not rest until you are dead." The Yin sifting sect master's Tao companion. Han Li coldly watched the nascent soul for a moment before suddenly relaxing his grip on the lightning and turning away. The woman's nascent soul was stunned for a moment before joyously flying through the gap, her mind filled with malicious thoughts of revenge. But just when she was 30 meters away from Han Li, the net suddenly tightened once more, tightly binding the nascent soul into the net. Soon after, thunder roared and the black-robed woman's nascent soul turned to ash. Now that I've already destroyed your body, how could I possibly allow you to the chance for revenge? Han Li muttered to himself helplessly and deeply sighed before turning his attention back to the huge ape. Although the series of events in which Han Li had exterminated the woman was complex, the matter had only occurred in the blink of an eye. The shriveled old spell warrior was already flying towards her in a streak of golden light during her time of danger. But in that moment, a strange pink light appeared nearby and turned into a large pink cloud, directly enveloping the shriveled spell warrior. In a series of rumbles, the shriveled old spell warrior managed to scatter the pink mist, and the light around him scattered to reveal an ashen complexion. He rigidly stared at the pink mist with eyes of rage. He truly didn't know what the yin-sifting sect master would do when he found out his Dao companion was killed. He could only grit his teeth in rage at Han Li and whoever it was that blocked him. A series of soft chuckles came from the pink cloud, and soon it disappeared to reveal a handsome youth with a soft face. He was the Harmonious Bond sect's Devil Cloudpart. Devil Cloudpart chuckled and glanced at Han Li. "Fellow Taoist Han, now that I've helped you, the debt is repaid." Having just flown back from killing the black-robed woman, Han Li replied, "It was only a chance matter that I freed you. I wasn't looking to be repaid. More importantly, Divine Sage Zhu isn't something the two of us can deal with, and he isn't alone." Once that was said, Han Li swept his gaze past the shriveled old man. In addition to the black-robed spell warriors that were doing their utmost to stop the huge ape's massacre, there was an army of spell warriors flying across the horizon. As bold as Devil Cloudpart may be, his expression immediately revealed surprise when he saw their great numbers. Earlier, Han Li had managed to rescue Devil Cloudpart from the barrier in a fluke by using 2 of the lightning beads. But just as Han Li was making plans to fight together with him, he suddenly saw the yin-sifting sect release a vast quantity of copper-armored corpses. It was then that Han Li decided to release the Weeping Soul Beast, curious about its abilities now that he had refined the Weeping Soul Pearl in its entirety. As soon as it had appeared, it caused an uproar with great enthusiasm and began to vigorously absorb the refined corpses around it. But what came as a surprise was how effective the Weeping Soul Beast was against corpses that cultivators have refined. Han Li knew that the Weeping Soul Beast was adept at devouring the souls of demons and ghosts, but it seemed its strange abilities had undergone an evolution along with its body. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Now that they've found themselves facing so many spell warriors, Han Li and Devil Cloudpart glanced at each other, both intending to flee. However, the Weeping Soul Beast was still rampaging amongst the army's refined corpses. Han Li was unwilling to abandon it there. Just as Han Li thought to use the Weeping Soul Pearl to order it to retreat, he suddenly heard roaring laughter from behind him. "Have no fear, fellow Taoist Han. Since you've released this great beast to deal with the refined corpses, we will help you deal these spell warriors." When Han Li heard Long Han's voice, he felt his heart stir. He quickly turned and saw Long Han 100 meters away, leading a squad of cultivators. Han Li was delighted. It was no wonder the spell warriors didn't immediately launch an attack. It seemed they were treating the situation carefully, having seen cultivator reinforcements were approaching them as well. When Long Han saw Han Li's demon-form self, a trace of astonishment momentarily appeared on his face, but he soon turned a blind eye to it. Now was not the time to ask about it. The cultivators were all watching the spell warriors across from them. The entire battlefield had already gone through a bitter struggle, and the time has come for the decisive battle. Both sides had their own victories and defeats as well as a vast number of losses. However, these battles weren't merely spars. Those that lost the battle lost their lives, and those that won would have to continue the fight exhausted. Long Han had sent other cultivators to keep Tianzhong occupied, freeing his Dao companion Feng Bing for a different battle. It was only when they were together that he would mobilize their true strength. Now that matters have reached this stage, Long Han had nothing else to say to the shriveled old spell warrior. Long Han softly waved his arm. The troops that he had preserved until now were elites. They promptly summoned their magic treasures and began their momentous attack, their bodies glowing with bright light. The spell warriors they were facing were unordinary as well, and they summoned their spiritual chi to confront them. Suddenly, the final confrontation between each army was about to begin. Although the spell warriors had an additional late nascent soul spell warrior, with Devil Cloudpart present along with 4 other mid-nascent soul cultivators, they would be able to forcefully restrain him. Li thought to join the attack against the shriveled old man's spell warriors, but when he swept his gaze over to the sacred bird, his expression vastly changed. The seven great truths cultivators and the yin-yang devils were able to withstand the Mulan's sacred bird, but after a short amount of time, they soon found themselves on the disadvantage. The two devils were handling themselves relatively well and were able to release yin winds and undead qi to ward off the azure flames. However, the seven great truths cultivators were now running out of magic power and they could no longer endure. There were two old men that were particularly strained, a red-faced old man with dimming spiritual light and a pale-faced old man with white qi visibly wavering around his nose and mouth. The two were clearly pushing past their limits using secret techniques. Li frowned and glanced at some dead cultivators nearby before looking at the spell warrior, who was standing guard nearby the ancient lanterns. Look after the weeping soul beast and don't let anything happen to it. Withdraw it if it is ever in danger. I'm going to head off to exterminate the ancient lanterns. Li spoke in an inaudible voice and tossed the weeping soul pearl behind him. In a flash of weak white light, the pearl disappeared from sight. Yes, Master, please be careful. That peacock's abilities are truly powerful. Silvermoon's worried voice came from behind him. Li calmly nodded, and when he saw that nobody nearby paid him any notice, he blurred from sight and disappeared. Li used the nameless qi retraining technique to conceal himself. Although Li's concealment techniques were vastly inferior to Silvermoon's techniques, this qi retraining technique was able to rival her own. Li had reached the peak of this technique. Not only could he completely erase the spiritual qi from his own body, he was also able to forcefully conceal the aura from his own body. As of current, not only was he concealing himself from spell warrior La, but also the unfathomably profound Mulan sacred bird. In the distant, spell warrior, La faintly revealed a trace of worry when she saw the cultivators tangle with the shriveled old man. Although she still guarded the ancient lanterns, she turned to the huge bird and beseeched the bird in an ancient language. When the azure flame bird heard this, it couldn't help but pause and turn around to glance at the shriveled old man's battle. With a trace of disdain from its eyes, it immediately turned its head back and shot several balls of azure flames into the sky, repulsing the seven great truths cultivators and leaving them in confusion. Then, with a clear cry, it spread its wings and took to the skies. It circled once in the air before facing the direction of the shriveled old man's battle. Then, with a tremble of its wings, a large expanse of azure feathers began to drop down from its body, and in a flash of light, each of the feathers turned into foot-long azure firebirds. Without any need for a command, these several hundreds of firebirds cawed and spread their wings, shooting towards the battle. Spell warrior La felt relieved at the scene. With these phantom birds, it was only a matter of time before victory was theirs. At that moment, she suddenly heard a series of explosions from the center of the battlefield. Spell warrior La bewilderedly glanced over at the source of the noise. Li, who was carefully sneaking closer to spell warrior La, was also astonished by the noise. At the very heart of the battlefield, a most important contest was taking place. The myriad soul formation, the mist that formed under the combined effort of several tens of ghost spirit sect disciples, had finally come to a stop and motionlessly floated in the air. Blocking it was an army of hollow spirit beasts formed by several Mulan sages as well as the stone giant. Under the command of the Mulan sages, the stone giant moved to block the myriad soul formation once it defeated the heavenly south cultivators attacking it. The recent noise was actually the stone giant slapping its hand down against the ghost mist. Before its palm even landed, countless boulders fell from its hand. No matter how confident were the ghost spirit sect disciples in the myriad soul spell formation, they didn't dare to receive the attack. With a prompt hiss, the ghost mist dodged out of the way, traveling a distance of 100 meters before stopping. When the heavenly south and Mulan combatants saw this, they all realized that the battle had reached its most critical point. As a result, the ghost spirit sect elder in charge of the formation came to a decision to use the spell formation's killing maneuver, regardless of the cost. Before the stone giant could further pursue the ghost mist, a gloomy incantation was uttered by the cultivators within the ghost mist. As ghostly wails screamed from the mist, a pillar of crimson light soared into the sky, and the eerie black ghost mist followed suit as if tainted by the light, turning crimson as the incantations continued. When the two Mulan sages who were standing on top of the stone giant's shoulders saw this, they appeared bewildered. A short moment, the incantations came to a stop, and the crimson mist roiled to reveal several tens of various colored lights fleeing from the mist at utmost speed. They were the cultivators from the Ghost Spirit Sect. The two Mulan sages were at a loss at the sight. At that moment, crimson mist came to life after being abandoned by the Ghost Spirit Sect cultivators. Several various-sized tentacles intermittently emerged from the mist and wildly danced around as the center of the mist began to rapidly shrink. The Ghost Spirit Sect elder in charge of the formation turned to face it after flying 20 meters away. He glanced at the crimson mist and thought, having absorbed so much blood essence from the spell warriors and the voluntary blood sacrifice, surely it will succeed. As the Ghost Spirit Sect elder watched with restlessness, the crimson mist shrunk to over half its size before beginning to squirm. When the two Mulan sages controlling the stone giant saw this, they immediately ordered the giant to fiercely stomp down upon it. Suddenly, the level ground was obscured from sight by sinister yellow yin winds, chilling to the core. Even the stone giant couldn't help but pause for the moment. By the time the Mulan spell warriors could see what was happening, they astonishedly discovered that yellow gusts of yin wind were surrounding the crimson mist, obscuring it from view. But then the yellow winds were forcefully blown open by a crimson silhouette as it emerged from within. When the two Mulan sages saw the appearance of the silhouette, they felt their breaths turn cold. It was a 30-meter-tall bloodval ghost. Its devilish head had two horns and two glistening fangs, both incisively sharp, and a ponytail seemed to form behind it. Its arms appeared to be sculpted out of wood with dagger-like fingers, and a layer of translucent scales seemed to wrap around them. Although vial ghosts were ordinarily said to be huge, it was several times smaller when compared to the stone giant. However, the ghost showed no fear and instead screamed at the giant as it stared at it with a cold glint in its eye. It lowered its head and its body darted like an arrow, launching itself at the lower leg of the stone giant. It extended its claws and swiped, immediately cleaving off a large portion of stone. The two Mulan sages couldn't allow this to continue and immediately had the stone giant to form fists and strike down at lightning speed, knocking the bloodval ghost over 30 meters away. The strike had blown off half of its head, but it stood up as if nothing had happened. Then, in a flash of crimson light, its head was restored as it charged to the stone giant once more. In the two sages' furious alarm, they ordered the hollow spirit beasts to attack and release their own magic treasures to assist the giant. As for the Ghost Spirit Sect cultivators that had fled from the Ghost Mist, they immediately turned around and joined the battle. Explosions continuously ruptured as crimson light continuously flashed from the battlefield. Bell Warrior La frowned at the sight of this and continued to watch the battle in silence. As a Mulan sage, she knew of the might of the stone giant and was surprised to see that the Heavenly South cultivators were able to match it, but she wasn't overly concerned over the matter. So long as the stone giant could persist for a moment more, she could call for the Mulan sacred bird to exterminate them and decide the battle. With that thought, she glanced at the huge bird a short distance away. As if knowing that it was a decisive moment on the battlefield, the Mulan sacred bird exerted the entirety of its fire spirit chi to envelope 300 meters of area into an azure sea of flame. In a spread of its wings, it separated the 7 old men and the yin-yang devils. The sea of flames down below split into two, separating the 2 devils from one another. With 2 devils neutered, it then focused a majority of its attacks on the 7 Great Truths cultivators. Unable to endure, these 7 old men soon found their lives to be in danger. Spell Warrior La was satisfied by the scene. When she turned around and saw that the lanterns were still half full with oil, her heart appeared particularly steadfast. Suddenly, the woman raised her brow and her eyes narrowed. In a swift motion, she summoned an ember of fire from one of the lanterns, and in a wave of her hand, it disappeared. Azure light flashed in an area 100 meters away, followed by a shout of alarm. A silhouette appeared with his body sparkling in azure light. A layer of flame enveloped him. Soon after, Spell Warrior La formed an incantation gesture with her hand, combusting the flame around the azure light barrier. Then, with a miserable scream, the flame turned the figure into ash. To think of concealing yourself near the bright origin lanterns, you truly are seeking death, the woman muttered without the mind to carefully examine the results. It was enough knowing that the victim was a Heavenly South cultivator. Ever since she ignited the ancient lanterns, she had 6 cultivators come after them one after another. After all, the huge bird only came into existence once the ancient lanterns were summoned, and they remained burning ever since. It took only a glance to know that there was something strange about them, so those that were skilled at concealment techniques thought to exterminate the lantern's flames. However, Not a single one of them were successful. They were all exterminated by the woman's flames. At that moment, Han Li was several hundred meters away from her. When he saw that the nameless cultivator had been effortlessly killed by the woman, he felt his heart shiver. He ceased his gradual approach towards the woman. Although the woman simply muttered to herself, Han Li was able to hear her words using his astonishing spiritual sense. Han Li then turned his gaze to the ancient lanterns not far away. He rubbed his chin as he pondered to himself. They seemed to be an extraordinary existence. Not only were they able to summon that demon bird, but they also had the ability to see through concealment. It would prove truly troublesome. Han Li's expression wavered for a long while and his brow shifted, having finally come to a decision. He slapped his storage pouch and fished out a few items. He then glanced at a few spirit beast pouches at his waist with a smile. A short moment later, Spell Warrior Le appeared vastly more on guard as she sat cross-legged in front of the ancient lanterns, a lotus mirage faintly visible around her. She was staring at them, fusing her spiritual sense with them, and allowing her to sense any movements with 100 meters of them. A flash of light suddenly appeared 100 meters away to reveal a dozen tall apes. Their bold appearance caused the woman to look at them with surprise. There was another entire row of apes standing behind the first. They all raised their arms, shooting several tens of beams of light from their hands. Puppets? Spell Warrior Le was shocked, and soon frowned when she discovered that they were well crafted. She cautiously looked around, failing to spot who was controlling the puppets. Spell Warrior Le paid little mind to the light beam attacks. With a single incantation gesture, the Lotus Mirage flickered and easily blocked them. Afterwards, the woman's body blurred and she picked off an ember of flame from one of the lanterns. This time, the woman didn't immediately release the ember. Rather, she kept it floating in her hand as she stared at the ancient lanterns in preparation for any strange changes. In a mere short moment, the woman's expression stirred and she opened her mouth, spitting out a breath of spiritual chi onto her hand. The flame then blazed with azure light before disappearing without a trace. She turned her head and glanced at an area 100 meters away. With a light pop, a silhouette appeared, covered in azure light. Then with an incantation gesture, the woman willed the flames to combust, a cold grin of satisfaction appearing on her lips. Yi, why are they still alive? The woman's smile froze and discovered that this silhouette wasn't instantly incinerated as with the previous cultivators, nor did it show any sign of struggle. In her alarm, she hastily examined the figure. This person is, no, not a person, it's a puppet. The silhouette appeared the same shape as Han Li, but its expression and body was completely stiff. Additionally, it appeared as if it weren't being burned by the azure flames in the slightest. Not good. In that instant, something immediately came to mind and she hastily turned her head to look at the ancient lanterns, re-examining her surroundings with her spiritual sense. Meanwhile, a silhouette appeared 60 meters away in a flash of azure light. Then with a ring of thunder, he disappeared in a flash of light. When Spell Warrior Le saw this, she formed an incantation gesture with both her hands in furious alarm, striking the lanterns with successive spell seals. However, she was too late. Lightning flashed beside the ancient lanterns, followed by the appearance of a youth. Soon after, a giant black-red hand was summoned in the air, growing to the size of 3 meters before fiercely swiping at the ancient lanterns. This person recognizes the main lantern. Only the caster could possibly know which one is the original. Even a late nascent soul cultivator shouldn't be able to see through them. When the woman saw this, she was shocked to the core. In this short distance, the large hand and Spell Warrior Le's spell seal struck the ancient lantern at the same time. The lantern flashed with life as it underwent a transformation, but in the process, the huge hand grabbed onto it, burning with black yin flames in an attempt to exterminate it. At nearly the same moment, the other 8 lanterns began to tremble, disappearing one by one in a flicker of light, dissipating into wisps of smoke. No, Spell Warrior Le blanched at the sight of this. With gritted teeth, she raised her hands, enveloping the black hand with a large lotus mirage in an attempt to seize back the ancient lantern. However, her attack was predicted. With the ancient lantern in its grasp, it immediately shot back without the slightest delay. Then with a cold snort, lightning rang once more, and both the black-red hand and the silhouette disappeared. In the following moment, the silhouette reappeared beside the puppet trapped in azure light, ancient lantern in hand. Han Li had used surprise to his greatest advantage. You will not leave. Spell Warrior Le flusteredly glanced at the azure bird and discovered that the sacred bird had yet to disappear. Her heart determined, she loudly screamed, enveloping her body in azure light as she chased after him in a clear wind. Han Li's expression grew sullen and white light flashed from his hands. With the ancient lantern placed inside his storage pouch, he unfolded his wings and disappeared to another location 100 meters away. At the same time, the woman appeared where he originally stood, pursuing him as a transformed wind. Han Li's gaze stirred and he suddenly formed a hand incantation with one of his hands uttering, "Explode." At that moment, the lightning bead in the puppet's mouth ruptured. With golden lightning and azure flames intertwined, not only did over half of the puppet disintegrate, but it also caught spell warrior La that was nearby. The woman's lotus mirage moved to protect her. Although its master acted without regard for her safety, each of the lotus petals glowed and rigidly blocked the attack. However, the lightning bead was beyond powerful. Although she hadn't suffered any damage, she knocked back 10 meters, dissolving her wind movement technique for a time. Han Li sighed. Although he felt the lightning bead hadn't reached its full potential, he blinked away once more and fled into the distance. By the time Spell Warrior La regained her bearings, Han Li was already over 300 meters away. Spell Warrior La gritted her teeth and was just about to give pursuit when the remaining half of the blown puppet began to release a monstrous sound. Having just suffered from it before, she hastily looked towards it in alarm to see it in azure light. Soon after, the remaining half of it began to scatter into swarms of tricolored beetles. Spell Warrior La was forced to confront them, and she hastily protected herself, shrouding her body in a white lotus. However, the tricolored beetles instantly condensed to form several large shields that blocked her path. Each time the woman attempted to use her wind movement technique, her casting was interrupted with wave after wave of attacks. In her immense fury, she launched a series of spirit techniques to strike the beetles, only to find that they were ineffective. At that moment, she shockingly discovered that the tricolored beetles appeared nearly identical to the gold-devouring beetles apart from the specks of black on their shell. Startled, she immediately reached the wood spirit treasure in her storage pouch to trap these flying insects, but before she could, the beetles scattered with a buzz. The woman changed expression several times from shock, and she hastily glanced into the distance. At an unknown time, Han Li had activated a concealment technique and already disappeared without a trace. Spell Warrior La's complexion changed between red and white as she remained still in the air, at a complete loss of what to do. At that same moment, the Mulan sacred bird just breathed out an azure fireball, destroying the protective treasure of one of the great truth's cultivators. Just as it rejoiced and was about to shred the cultivator with its talons, it suddenly felt spiritual power wildly drained from its body. In its shock, the bird was unable to injure the cultivator, and it hastily turned its head around to discover that the ancient lantern had disappeared. The huge bird could only shriek in panic as its body quickly shrank, having instantly lost its ability to control fire spirit chi. As for the sea of azure flames, it intensely burned for a moment more before disappearing without a trace, much to the astonishment of the 7 great truths cultivators. The yin-yang devils transformed into a green wind as soon as they were freed and fiercely struck at the weakened azure bird. By then, the bird had already shrunk to a meter long. Its eyes were filled with resentment as it stared at the 2 approaching devils without the slightest intention of dodging. Before the twin devils could strike it, the bird had exploded, transforming into countless specks of azure light that soon faded away. Once this happened, the yin-yang devils paused and simply stood in the sky. How did this happen? One of the old men asked with joy, having escaped death. At that moment, his magic power was already drained and he was nearly defenseless. Look over there. It seems they've had some problem with the treasure they used to summon the demon bird. The ancient lantern is no longer there. The leading old man let out a long sigh, and he swept his gaze over to where the ancient lanterns once floated. He appeared completely relieved, as if he had escaped calamity. He felt as if he had been only a mere moment from death. The Mulan sacred bird's disappearance was soon known to both sides of the battlefield, causing a massive turnaround in morale. The spell warriors found themselves vastly in shock, and the cultivators with their spirits roused. When the shriveled old man and Tian Zhang saw this while they were in battle, they wore an expression of disbelief. The sacred bird can't have disappeared because it ran out of lantern oil. The only possibility was that a cultivator has extinguished the bright origin lantern. The 2 divine sages couldn't have known that the Mulan lineage treasure had fallen into Han Li's grasp once again. From how they saw it, with their late nascent soul stage cultivators occupied, and their other cultivators suppressed by the sacred bird, there was no possibility of a breach of Spell Warrior La's defenses. This terrible reality has come as a vast surprise. Han Li had stealthily arrived by the side of the Weeping Soul Beast before making a reappearance. By that point, the Weeping Soul Beast had already exterminated a majority of the refined corpses. The remaining fraction of them had been hastily withdrawn by the Yin-sifting sect's cultivators, as it was only a matter of time before all of the copper-armored corpses were eliminated. Having absorbed so much undead qi, the Weeping Soul Beast grew even larger, and its fur shined with even stronger black light. It appeared completely strengthened. Of course, there were many black-robed cultivators and spell warriors who wished to exterminate the huge ape. However, Longhand fully understood that this strange huge ape was the key to dealing with the copper-armored corpses and immediately dispatched men to protect it. There would occasionally be those that made it past, but Silvermoon would lead them astray with her illusion techniques, sending them off to their doom. By the time Han Li made it back, the Weeping Soul Beast was finishing off the final copper-armored corpses that have yet to be withdrawn. He waved his arm at the beast, and in a flicker of black light, the beast shrunk and flew into a spirit pouch at his waist in a streak of black light. When Silvermoon saw this, she approached him from behind. Having withdrawn the Weeping Soul Beast, Han Li thought to say something further to Silvermoon when a kilometer of the sky was suddenly covered in dark clouds, countless bolts of green lightning flashing from within. Han Li glanced at the sky in awe. "Who is it? Who is it that killed my wife? I will take your soul and wipe it away." The thunderous roar of the Yin-sifting sect master echoed through the skies. When Han Li heard this, he felt his heart thump and he gloomily watched him. "Why are you so quick to leave before victory has been decided? I wish to experience your demonic techniques." Quickly following after the black-robed man's shout was Devil Conquered's faint voice. Soon after, a gray mist shot out from the sky and blocked the black clouds from moving. "I have no intention of sparring with you. Leave me be or I won't hold back." The piercing voice of the Yin-sifting sect master echoed through the sky. Devil Conquered chuckled. "You won't hold back. Surely you haven't been holding back during our last fight. Go ahead and show me what you have." The black-robed man was silent for a spell before gloomily responding, "Fine. Since you have no sense of propriety, I won't be wasting any more time on you. I'll have you witness the might of my sect's treasure, the ghost-sifting banner." By the end of the sentence, it seemed almost as if the sifting Yin sect master was smiling. The ghost-sifting banner, Devil Conquered voice appeared to carry curiosity. This short exchange of words was cause for astonishment for the cultivators fighting down below. It also came as a great surprise to many that the Yin-sifting sect's Tao companion had already fallen into the hands of the Heavenly South cultivators. Han Li's expression remained calm, but once he saw that Devil Conquered blocked off the Yin-sifting sect master, he felt greatly relieved. He didn't want to be chased down again by a late nascent soul cultivator. At that moment, everyone believed that Devil Conquered and the Yin-sifting sect master were about to descend from the skies and carry out their battle down below when something else occurred. A fierce whistle traveled from the direction of the Mulan, followed by the arrival of tensome streaks of various colored lights. Before the streaks of light approached the spell warriors, someone had already shouted towards them, "Divine sages, quickly stop the fight. Something had occurred at the Mulan Plains." The voice spread throughout the battlefield, amplified by some sort of secret technique. Soon after, the streaks of light quickened and entered the battlefield. When those words were uttered, a majority of the battle had paused as both cultivators and spell warriors glanced over in astonishment. The shriveled old man felt his heart sink at these words, and his enemies had ceased attacking from the surprise as well. The shriveled old spell warrior took advantage of this moment to disengage from the battle and fly towards the tensome spell warriors that had just arrived. Longhand hesitated for a moment, but he didn't pursue them. The shriveled old man had the advantage in the previous battle. There wasn't anything to be gained by pursuing him. It was rather strange that these spell warriors had the cultivators hear the message too, but that was a matter to be left alone for another time. Since they've mentioned the Mulan Plains, the matter might have something to do with the soaring tribes. Han Li also watched the shriveled old spell warrior with an odd expression and stared at the tensome streaks of light. The lights all disappeared to reveal variously dressed spell warriors. They were being led by a yellow-robed spell warrior possessing mid-nascent soul cultivation, much to Han Li's surprise. It was odd for such a powerful spell warrior to not be assigned to the battlefield. Could it be that he was guarding something important? Regardless, it only added credibility to his words. As for Devil Conquered and the Yin-sifting sect master, they had silently disappeared into the clouds. When the shriveled old spell warrior saw the yellow-robed spell warrior, he wore an incredulous expression. Before he could even speak, The yellow-robed spell warrior flew to his side and spoke to him through voice transmission, causing the old man's expression to grow sullen. Afterwards, the yellow-robed spell warrior handed over a jade slip to him. The old man received the jade slip and read through it. A short moment, his complexion grew pale. After a quick word with the yellow-robed spell warrior, the old man turned around and gloomily flew towards Long Han. When he arrived in front of Long Han, he calmly said, "We will not be continuing the war. The battle is over. Otherwise, a third party will reign over us both." Long Han's expression flickered and he neutrally said, "What do you mean by that? If you want to stop this battle, you must give me a reason." Because of Han Li's unexpected displays of might, both the copper-armored corpses and their sacred bird have been dealt with, evening out the battle. Long Han unconsciously felt that the spell warriors were retreating out of fear. The spell warrior sullenly asked, "Did you send a group of cultivators to infiltrate Soaring Heaven City storehouse?" Long Han hid his alarm and maintained a calm exterior. With a flicker of his eyes, he calmly replied, "It seems you've discovered this matter." "Discovered?" The old man snorted with a furious expression and calmly said, "Were it not for the interference from the third party, it was likely you would have succeeded." The third party. Long Han frowned upon hearing this. Saying nothing further, the shriveled old man continued the conversation through voice transmission. When Long Han heard what he said, he cried out in alarm, unable to maintain his calm. "What, so it was like that? With matters having reached this far, what do I have to gain by lying to you?" the old man bluntly said. Long Han frowned and grew silent for a moment before suddenly raising his hand and releasing a talisman towards the air. It suddenly transformed into several golden spheres of light and erupted with blinding magnificence. Suddenly, the cultivators ceased attacking and hastily withdrew back to the defensive spell formation. The withdrawing cultivators appeared like swarming bees returning to the nest. Without the need for any commands, the spell warriors also withdrew. The Bloodval Ghost and the Stone Giant were forced to cease fighting in particular. In an instant, the battlefield became entirely empty. With both sides separated, it was clear to see that there were many casualties. However, there weren't many losses amongst high-grade cultivators on both sides. The spell warrior camp was somewhat better off. Although they were somewhat bewildered, they ultimately kept calm. But on the cultivators' side, there was a huge uproar. A few high-grade cultivators were speaking with Long Han to understand the situation. However, Long Han would only bitterly smile in response to the dissatisfaction of the cultivators around him. At that moment, the dark clouds and grue mist separated in the sky to reveal the silhouettes of Devil-Conquered and Yin-Sifting Sect Master, coldly staring at each other. At that moment, the sounds of battle in the sky had instantly ceased, and soon after, Wei Wuya and Master Sunreach both flew down from the sky. Their appearances came as a great relief to the cultivator camp. A short moment later, the scholarly man surnamed Zhu and the dwarf flew down from the sky as well, arousing a series of cheers from the Mulan. Once the three great cultivators have returned, Long Han began to speak to them, but out of fear of panic, they could only limit the information to a select few. Only cultivators at mid-nascent soul stage and a few others were allowed to listen. With a few simple restrictions protecting them, they began to speak of the terrible news that the Mulan had told them. Due to Han Li's amazing display of might during this battle, it was only natural for him to participate as well. Long Han erected a soundproofing barrier and took out several small flags, forming a barrier of mist around them. Han Li couldn't help but ponder in silence at the sight of this. There weren't many cultivators present. Leaving out the several eccentrics still stuck inside the blood barriers, there were a little over 20 people. These people represented many of the factions fighting in the battle. Master Sunreach asked, "Fellow Taoist Long, what has happened? Why do the Mulan no longer wish to fight?" Wei Wuya said in a doubtful tone, "It is strange. Matters have already reached past that point. Do they have some vain illusion of making peace?" Long Han bitterly smiled and said, "It isn't some vain illusion. I fear we may not have the option to choose." Devil-Conquered frowned and asked with an astonished tone, "How can that be? Has another party interfered with the war?" Long Han sullenly said, "That's right. The soaring tribes have attacked. It is also said that they've joined forces with several sects from the Jin Empire, jointly attacking the Mulan. The greatest of the Mulan tribes was stationed behind as a rear guard, watching over their homeland, but they were completely annihilated in only a month. News of this had been obstructed so well that the other tribes had no idea of this. It seems the soaring tribes wishes to sweep us both away and take our heavenly south continent for themselves." When the other cultivators heard this, their hearts grew sullen and silence filled the air. Han Li frowned as well, feeling that matters have taken a turn for the worse. A tiger may have approached them from the front, but there were wolves lying in wait the entire time. Taoist's shattered soul snorted. Is this information true? It is quite far between the soaring tribes and our heavenly south continent. Are they not simply bluffing? It can't be. Eccentric Heavenvenge and the other cultivators to infiltrate Soaring Heaven City were defeated. It is said that the Soaring Tribe spies had the same intentions as our own. They sent a group of cultivators to infiltrate Soaring Heaven City and pillage the Mulan storehouse. As a result, Eccentric Heavenvenge came across them, leading to an unexpected discovery. Then with a helpless tone, Longhand continued. With regards to the battle, I'm sure everyone understood that the fully deployed forces of the Mulan were slightly inferior to our own, but they carried a dying resolve. Were it not for fellow Taoist Han's vast display of might in dealing with the copper-armored corpses and the Mulan's sacred bird, I fear we would have suffered a huge loss. Although the powers of the heavenly south had done their utmost, the various sects have all left behind nearly half of their disciples to guard their bases. Had they joined the war, we would have been able to completely wipe away the Mulan spell warriors, but that would have resulted in a huge loss in strength. With the soaring tribes soon to come, we would have been completely powerless to resist them. Many of the cultivators who hadn't known Han Li had both dealt with the refined corpses, and the azure sacred bird couldn't help but glance at him in astonishment. Han Li calmly turned a blind eye to their gazes. Wei Wuya gloomily snorted and coldly said, "The Mulan wanted to seize our domain. How can there be talks for peace? Don't tell me we're truly giving them half of our land." Longhand said, "That is absolutely out of the question. However, we can hand over 2 countries that border the Mulan plains over to them. As such, the Mulan will bear the brunt of the assault from the soaring tribes. Since they are mortal enemies, there is no chance of betrayal from the Mulan. Of course, given how powerful the soaring tribes are, we will have to cooperate with the Mulan in fighting with them." In the blink of an eye, these 2 irreconcilable enemies turned into allies. However, there were no objections raised amongst these ancient, well-experienced eccentrics. "That territory belongs to our 9 nations union. Are we to hand it over?" Wei Wuya's expression grew unsightly. Longhand explained, "There is nothing that can be done about it. Those areas are the closest to the Mulan plains. Of course, we won't allow you to accept this loss alone. After some talks, we'll be sure to compensate your union." "Then let's leave that matter for later. We'll have to see what the Mulan think first." Wu Wuya was clearly satisfied with the matter, but he pushed the matter behind regardless. Han Li then turned his gaze to Master Sunreach and Devil Conquered. They appeared to be pondering about the matter, but it seemed they've already decided. It was only on behalf of Wei Wuya's face that they didn't immediately agree. Han Li sighed. It seemed each power has returned to plotting against each other for their own advantage. And Longhand heard Wei Wuya, he didn't reveal the slightest surprise. Rather, he smiled and said, "This was something I had said without consideration. Of course, we will have a proper discussion on how we specifically deal with them, but before we start negotiations, we must immediately send men to the Mulan Plains and investigate whether the Soaring Tribe's invasion is true. If it is, the Mulan will not be able to continue fighting us and we will both have to make concessions. Otherwise, the Soaring Tribes will sweep us both away." The cultivators felt much more at ease with this explanation. Even Wei Wuya's expression relaxed as the discussion was carried out. During this time, Han Li kept silent. Since he had nothing to contribute, he saved his breath. If matters didn't involve the Drifting Cloud sect or himself, he was felt disinclined to put in any effort. And with Longhand there, he reckoned the Heavenly Tao Union won't suffer a great loss. Not long after, the eccentrics had finished discussing their plans and contingencies. Afterwards, they dispelled the restrictions surrounding them, and the 3 great cultivators began to have a quick word about something else. Eventually, the Mulan and the Heavenly South cultivators both sent a few men to discuss the terms of the temporary ceasefire. As for the other matters, that would only be discussed in the coming days. The Mulan sages all wore a gloomy expression. With their way back blocked off and their home gone, the spell warriors felt at a complete loss. Their morale had dropped to complete low. Han Li and the other cultivators watched the Mulan armies withdraw and slowly evacuate towards Skyforce City. The battle at the border between hundreds of thousands of immortal cultivators have come to an end. Several months later, in a seemingly endless barren mountain range, a streak of azure light quickly flashed through it at the speed of lightning. A silhouette could be faintly seen from within the light. He wore scholarly robes and had a common appearance. He was Han Li, who was returning to the Drifting Cloud Sect. In the time since the border battle had ended, startling information that the soaring tribes were intending to take advantage of their weakened state had spread, forcing the Mulan and the Heavenly South to come to a reluctant ceasefire. By the time eccentric Heavenvenge returned to Skyforce City and confirmed that there was another power attacking the Mulan, the many factions sent several waves of their own cultivators to sweep the Mulan plains, discovering that the Mulan mortals had been pushed to the border of the plains. As for the original residents of the Mulan tribes, they have begun showing traces of the soaring tribes. As a result, the Heavenly South could no longer delay and began to negotiate with the Mulan with great intensity. At the start, the Mulan wished for a third of the Heavenly South continent, or they would risk extermination for the Heavenly South and restart the war. For a time, neither side could move the discussion, but soon after, the Mulan mortals began to gather at the edge of the plains, and the soaring tribes began to openly pursue Mulan spell warriors. As a result, the divine sages could only gradually concede. After all, the Mulan were now on the verge of extinction, and they were able to have discussions with the Heavenly South cultivators, unlike the soaring tribes who they held several tens of thousands of years of mutual hatred with. With several rounds of discussion, they eventually reached an agreement to give 2 countries to the Mulan and move the native mortals to other countries. Then, each of the 3 powers carved out a portion of their own territories to compensate the 9 nations union, housing the clans and sects that were displaced. In return, the Mulan had to resist the soaring tribes' invasion with all their might, in accordance to what the Heavenly South powers had planned. Of course, the Heavenly South powers did provide assistance to resist the soaring tribes together. As a result, although the Mulan acquired their own land to live on, they bore the same responsibility that the 9 nations once did. They were required to stand on guard for any attacks by the soaring tribes. And because they were only given 2 countries, the Heavenly South powers didn't need to worry about the Mulan expanding and becoming a threat later on. After all, one's potential power is limited to the number of cultivation resources one possesses. While the Mulan were confined to 2 countries, they managed to avoid extermination, and they wouldn't have to fight the soaring tribes alone. They would have the assistance of the Heavenly South factions. Under the current circumstances, both parties were satisfied with this agreement. But among this, there was something that occurred to Han Li. Since he had killed the Tao companion of the Yin-sifting sect master, the sect master was unwilling to leave it be and sent him many challenges to fight him alone. However, whenever Han Li received these messages, he immediately extinguished them without any intention of replying to them. It wasn't reasonable to expect that an early nascent soul stage cultivator to fight a late nascent soul stage cultivator, and Han Li wasn't the reckless hot-blooded sort either. He wouldn't do something so stupid without reason. Once discussions were finished between the Mulan and the Heavenly South, the Yin-sifting sect master seemed to have come to an agreement with the Mulan divine sages, and he immediately departed with his subordinates. It was reportedly said that he returned to the Jin Empire, much to the relief of Han Li. As for the ancient lantern that Han Li captured, it was the legacy treasure of the Mulan tribes, the Bright Origin Lantern. The Mulan divine sages have all expressed that the Bright Origin Lantern was something passed down to the Mulan through successive generations. As it wasn't something that should fall into the hands of outsiders, they immediately called for its return. Of course, Han Li wasn't about to refuse them or let this opportunity pass. He immediately demanded several chunks of auric essence in exchange, but it was a pity that the Mulan didn't possess much of it. They were only able to come up with what amounted to a small piece. As a result, Han Li reluctantly accepted other rare materials to compensate and return the ancient lantern. Han Li didn't truly wish to hold onto the lantern. While its abilities were truly profound, it would one day come to haunt him. If decided to keep it, there would come a day where the Mulan would conspire to acquire it back. As such, it was better to be rid of it. On his way back to the Drifting Cloud Sect, Han Li glanced at the storage pouch at his waist. When Han Li returned the ancient lantern in exchange for the rare materials, the Mulan had returned the flower basket ancient treasure and the purple cloud lace without any prior discussion. It seemed the Mulan clearly understood that if they were to stay in the Heavenly South for long, they couldn't afford to offend their high-grade cultivators. As such, the ancient treasures were returned to him so that there would be no grudges between them. Since Han Li had shown immense power at his young age, even the Mulan divine sages viewed him with dread. With the ancient treasures returned, Han Li promptly gave the purple cloud lace back to Silvermoon. Although she only made use of the treasure while she was in her demon fox body, she had used it to great effect. Since Han Li wasn't the ungrateful sort, he gave the purple cloud lace over to her as a reward. When news spread out that the Heavenly South cultivators and the Mulan had joined hands, the soaring tribes grew hesitant for a time. Although they stationed a large number of cultivators at the border of the Mulan Plains, they didn't immediately launch an attack. They merely observed the actions of the Heavenly South and the Mulan, deciding to only observe in the near future. However, the soaring tribe's actions only caused for greater concern to Master Sunreach and the other leading figures of the Heavenly South. The deliberation of their enemies only displayed a greater intent to invade the Heavenly South continent. Seeing that there would be quite some time before further confrontation, the various powers of the Heavenly South took turns guarding the border as they did before. Each sect would send a few of their elite disciples and garrison them near the two countries given to the Mulan. If the soaring tribes did attack, the Mulan would be hard-pressed and the stationed disciples would be able to provide immediate assistance. As for the other cultivators, they were allowed to return to their sects. As a drifting cloud sect elder, Han Li had much to do with senior martial brother Lu. After confirming that most of the sect disciples had survived, he was free to return to the sect. Lu Luo had a few other matters to deal with and had to stay behind for a few days. As such, Han Li returned first. On the way, Han Li used the wind-riding chariot to hasten his journey, allowing him to cut down on the time it took to travel back. But when he entered the state of Zai, Han Li put the chariot away to avoid any unnecessary attention. The remaining 100 kilometers were traveled in nearly the blink of an eye. When he saw the Dreamcloud Mountains in the distance, he couldn't help but smile as he thought of Nangong Wan's beautiful appearance. Soon Han Li found himself inside a secret room, glaring at a silver-haired old man, his senior martial brother Cheng. With a face filled with fury and malevolence, Han Li uttered, "What's going on?" When he had returned to the drifting cloud sect, he didn't immediately return to his cave residence. Rather, he was stopped halfway and was brought to a secret room brimming with glacial energy. It was there that Han Li saw an astonishing sight. Nangong Wan had transformed into a 7-year-old child, sealed inside a slab of ice. Her eyes were shut as if completely oblivious to her surroundings, much to the fury and alarm of Han Li. Senior martial brother Cheng bitterly smiled and sighed. If junior martial brother Han had returned 2 weeks earlier, he might have been able to prevent this from happening. There is no danger to her life for now, but she is forced to use this method to delay the activation of the Soul Seal Curse. The Soul Seal Curse. How did this Yin Curse take effect? Wasn't this curse lost long ago in the Heavenly South? Could it be? Han Li paused to a moment when something soon came to mind. Seeing that Han Li recalled something, senior martial brother Cheng gave Han Li a detailed explanation of what happened to her. Half a month ago, Nangong Wan emerged from her cave residence in the morning to absorb the frost of a nearby mountain for the use of her incarnation arts, but she didn't expect to encounter a black-robed man on her outing. As soon as this man saw Nangong Wan, he immediately attacked her with a ferocious devil Dao technique, breaking through several of her protective treasures. When Nangong Wan saw this, she hastily called for help and attempted to escape in the direction of her cave residence. By the time senior martial brother Cheng and other drifting cloud sect disciples went to assist her, she had already fallen into the black-robed man's grasp. He simply pressed his finger against her forehead and soon released her. In his alarm, senior martial brother Cheng immediately ordered his disciples to jointly attack the black-robed man. But when the black-robed man saw so many drifting cloud sect disciples present, he didn't make an attempt to fight them. With a cold smile, he left a jade slip behind and flew away at the speed of lightning. Unable to do anything to him, senior martial brother Cheng brought Nangong Wan back to the sect in an attempt to heal her, only to discover that she had suffered from the Soul Seal Curse, a secret restriction that was long lost to the Heavenly South Devil Dao. When the restriction is forcefully placed on a person, their intellect and spirit are slowly sealed. Then, depending on the target's cultivation, their soul is slowly destroyed after an unknown amount of time, turning the target into a living corpse. It was once an extremely malicious method to deal with an enemy. The old man was extremely frightened by the sight of this curse and was at a complete loss of what to do. But at that moment, Nangong Wan had managed to awaken on her own. After learning that she suffered from the Soul Seal Curse, she paled and immediately thought of a method to save her own life. She decided to use an ability of her greater incarnation arts and temporarily seal herself using glacial qi. As a result, not only would this completely seal Nangong Wan's body, but it would also slow down the effects of the curse to a vast degree. The result is how you see her currently. Once that was said, he handed over an azure and a red jade slip over to Han Li. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng sighed and said, "One of the jade slips was left behind for Junior Marshal Sister Nangong by the black-robed man. As for the other piece, it was something he had left behind for Junior Marshal Brother Han in particular. Please take a look at them." Han Li sullenly received the 2 jade slips and examined them before deciding to first read through the jade slip meant for Nangong Wan. After immersing his spiritual sense into the jade slip, he wore a strange expression. Although he appeared somewhat worried, he appeared to be grateful as well. This had stunned Senior Marshal Brother Cheng. The jade slip was left behind by Nangong Wan for Han Li. The old man hadn't read through this jade slip as there had been a small trick placed on it, allowing others to know if someone else had read through it first. Since it was easily seen through, the old man wouldn't rashly make such a mistake. Due to Han Li's recent rise in reputation and display of might, he couldn't afford to treat him lightly. After Han Li finished reading through the azure jade slip, Han Li sighed and moved to the crimson jade slip. Once he read through it, Han Li's expression sank and he twisted his hands in fury, immolating the jade slips in purple flames. The old man was astonished by the sight. Although these jade slips weren't meticulously refined, it was rather difficult to burn them without leaving even ash behind. Since Han Li was able to do this without much effort, it only validated many of the rumors of Han Li that claimed his own power was greater than that of a mid-nascent soul cultivator. He had found a rather formidable character on behalf of the Drifting Cloud sect. As the old man's thoughts appeared in his head, Han Li muttered to himself and asked, "Senior Marshal Brother Cheng, did you catch the face of the person who ambushed Nangong Wan? Was he tall? And what was his cultivation? Perhaps he is someone that I know." The old man promptly replied, "I did manage to catch sight of him, and he was quite tall. He was a youth with an ordinary face. He seemed to be using some sort of concealment technique to hide. My abilities were too poor to see through them. However, he should be at mid-nascent soul stage at the very least, as he was able to easily defeat fellow Taoist Nangong." A youth, Han Li's expression flickered. He felt it surprising. "That's right. However, with his cultivation, he is certain to be like Junior Marshal Brother. He must have taken some sort of medicine pill or cultivated some technique to halt his appearance. However, his age is also certain to be larger than your own. There are sparsely few cultivators in this world that are able to condense a nascent soul at your age. Junior Marshal Brother, from what I saw of the jade slip that the black-robed man left behind, he wishes for Junior Marshal Brother to bring your magic treasure refined from golden lightning bamboo to the profound heaven mountains. Could it be this person is truly a devil Dao cultivator from the Jin Empire? Do you truly possess a precious treasure refined from golden lightning bamboo?" The old man was unable to hold his questions back. "I can't be certain whether or not it is that person, but regardless, he has a relationship with me. He should be a devil cultivator from the Jin Empire's Yin Sifting sect. I originally believed that they wished to take vengeance on me for killing one of their sect members, but I didn't expect for them to desire my golden lightning bamboo treasure. It seemed they wished to pay me a visit even if I didn't kill their sect member. As a result, Wanner was involved. It is true that I possess a treasure refined from golden lightning bamboo." Once that was said, the anger from his face slipped away, only to be replaced with a harsh coldness. "This comes as no surprise. Golden lightning bamboo is legendary for its ability to restrain devilish arts, and since they're from the Jin Empire, they don't have to show any restraint in dealing with cultivators from the heavenly south. How about this? I'll invite some of my close friends to join together and find that man." Han Li shook his head and slowly said, "There is no need. If I've guessed correctly, his cultivation will be profound, and he'll be a character on par with the Mulen divine sages. If common cultivators encountered him, they wouldn't be able to deal with him and they would only bring about their own deaths. Besides, he possesses the Soul Seal Curse's removal method. I don't want to scare him off." Senior Marshal Brother Cheng shouted in alarm, "On par with a Mulen divine sage? Could he be a late nascent soul stage cultivator? If that's the case, Junior Marshal Brother definitely can't take him on alone. It will be too dangerous, so let's request some help from Long Han and Feng Bing." With a deep sigh, Han Li calmly said, "Although they will be able to deal with this person, they will need at least 4 months to arrive. It will be too late. The black-robed man is only giving 2 months of time past the assault. It seems he's calculated when I would return, but he didn't anticipate that I could travel so quickly. This will give me some time to consider how to properly deal with him. Most importantly, I will need to find out how to acquire the method to dissolve the soul seal curse. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng could only nod in agreement. All right, if Junior Marshal Brother needs any assistance, please don't hesitate to ask. The sect's disciples are at your disposal. Many thanks, Senior Marshal Brother. According to the Jade slip Wanner left behind, she's able to postpone the activation of the soul seal curse for nearly 100 years, but in truth, this had never been tested before, so I can't help but worry. Hanley glanced at the girl in the wall of ice with worry. After a moment of thought, the old man consoled. There is no need for Junior Marshal Brother to be so anxious. From what I see, she should be able to survive and pass this trial. How about this? In the next few days, I'll go and look through a few ancient records and see if there are any methods of dissolving the curse, resolving any need to go seek out the black-robed man. Hanley forced a smile and said, "Thank you for the trouble, Senior Marshal Brother. If you have no objections, I wish to be alone here for a while. I hope you don't take offense." Of course. I'll be heading to the records library now. Please keep your wife company." Senior Marshal Brother Cheng responded with a tone of empathy, and he promptly left, leaving Han Li alone in the room. Han Li then turned his attention to the ice wall, his face wearing a lonely expression as he let out a long sigh. After an entire day, Han Li had yet to leave the room. When Senior Marshal Brother Cheng returned from the records library and saw that Han Li still remained inside, he couldn't help but worry. After half a day more, he felt the need to check up on him. But just as he thought to enter, Han Li suddenly emerged from the room. "Junior Marshal Brother Han, has anything happened?" the old man asked with bewilderment. Han Li's heart warmed, seeing the old man was waiting for him outside the door. He apologetically said, "It's nothing. I was only thinking of my plans on how I should deal with the enemy. Sorry for making you worry. There is still a month left before the deadline. I must prepare to enter seclusion. You won't need to bother me if there isn't anything important." "You're going to enter seclusion. What can you do in such a short amount of time?" Senior Marshal Brother Cheng appeared baffled. Han Li vaguely replied, "I've acquired a bit of auric essence since I've been gone. I was prepared to further temper my magic treasures, but in such a short amount of time, I'll only be able to strengthen them somewhat." The old man suddenly came to an understanding and said, "So it was like that. Please go ahead, Junior Marshal Brother. I'll make sure none of the sect disciples will bother you." Han Li solemnly added on, "There is still something else. Since the ice wall is formed here, I cannot stray too far. Otherwise, something could happen to it. However, I can place several more spell formations to surround it and better protect Wanner. I will have to trouble Senior Marshal Brother to attend to it." "Please don't worry, Junior Marshal Brother. Fellow Taoist Nangong was attacked while within the domain of our Drifting Cloud sect, and as such, I bear the responsibility. I've already had this place classified as a forbidden area. There will be no disciples wandering over here. There will be no problem with your wife's safety." The silver-haired old man replied instantly, as if having already considered the problem. A bright glint flashed through Han Li's eyes. "Since that's the case, I am relieved. With no time to lose, I'll first place down the spell formations before entering seclusion." Leaving the old man behind, he returned to his cave residence, surprised to see that Mu Paling was waiting for him there. A trace of astonishment flickered from his eyes, but he still welcomed her inside. Once Mu Paling entered the hall, she worriedly asked, "Is Big Sister Nanlong all right? I heard that she was wounded, but I didn't receive any precise information. I've been worried." Han Li took a seat and calmly asked, You have a good relationship with Wanner?" Mu Paling promptly replied, "We get along well. Big Sister Nanlong's temperament is quite good. While my lord was away, she gave me much guidance with my cultivation. I am indebted to her." After a moment of silence, he wore a bitter smile. "I should be happy from what you said. However, Wanner has suffered from the soul seal curse and has sealed herself, so I can take joy in what Yoi said. But in the several months I haven't seen you, your cultivation has clearly risen. I am pleased that you haven't been slacking in your cultivation. As for me, I will have to spend the next month in seclusion, making preparations to dissolve Wanner's curse." Mu Paling couldn't help but ask, "Soul seal curse? That devil Dao curse will be troublesome. My lord, do you have a way to solve it?" A harsh expression suddenly appearing on his face, Han Li gloomily said, "Solve it. I can only defeat the person who placed down the curse and acquire the method to dissolve it from his felled body." When Mu Paling heard this, she could only frown. At that moment, the disciple who Han Li had picked up out of convenient Liu Yu came to visit him. In addition to sending her regards to her master, she also came to ask about Nangong Wan. As a clever person, she had befriended Nangong Wan, her master's wife. When she arrived, Han Li gave her a short summary of what had happened, including to mention the Soul Seal curse. This had worried Liu Yu, but given her lacking experience and cultivation, there was nothing she could do. With no intention of continuing to chat with the two women, Han Li escorted them out. Naturally, the two didn't raise any objections and obediently left. But just as the two left the cave residence, Liu Yu's eyes flickered and she smiled at Mu Paling. Fellow Taoist Mu, while you are the master's concubine, it seems that you are still a maiden and are treated only as a guest. Could it be that your beauty doesn't move him, or is there some other reason? With Lady Nangong's beauty being above yours, you had better shape up. You mean? Mu Paling blushed as soon as she realized what Liu Yu meant. Then with a smile, Liu Yu shot into the sky in a streak of light. After blankly standing in place for a moment, she immediately flew off on her magic tool. When Han Li saw the two women depart, he checked the medicine garden and the insect room to see they were all doing fine. Then, after bringing a few tool refinement materials into a sealed room, he began to use nascent flame to temper the auric essence into his 36 flying swords. In addition to the pieces of auric essence he had acquired from Master Sunreach and the Mulan, he was given another piece of auric essence from Long Han on behalf of the Heavenly Tao Alliance. As a result, he had more than enough auric essence to fully temper his 36 flying swords. Tempering additional materials into completed magic treasures wasn't a complicated task. However, it was rather pressing to do this only in a month. Han Li could only sit down and do his utmost to temper his swords until they could form a minor version of the Grand Aureate Sword formation, allowing him to battle against a late nascent soul stage cultivator. As for the person who placed the Soul Seal curse on Nangong Wan, he should most likely be the Yin Sifting Sect Master. He needed to acquire the method of dissolving the curse, and the minor form of the Aureate Sword formation would be his way of getting it. With those thoughts in mind, Han Li placed his hand against his storage pouch and summoned several various-sized pieces of auric essence on the ground. He then summoned the supplementary materials from his storage pouch by their side. Han Li sat down cross-legged and pointed to the smallest piece of auric essence. The faintly golden stone floated in the air and slowly flew towards Han Li. Han Li stared at it unwaveringly and waited until it was a meter in front of him before it stopped. Then, with his hands held in an incantation gesture, he spat out a dazzling azure nascent flame. With a light bang, it struck the auric essence and instantly enveloped it. Han Li slowly began his incantation, and the azure nascent flame suddenly flared, glowing ever brighter, slowly melting the stone inside. He stared at it with a stern expression. After an hour had passed, a majority of the impurities dripped onto the floor as quite liquid. The rest of the auric essence remained in the fire as a translucent liquid. Once Han Li saw this, he flung his sleeve and swept up a jade box from the ground. It instantly opened itself to reveal a fine silver powder. The powder was then swept into the liquid auric essence in a streak of silver light, roiling the azure flames. The transparent liquid then began to shine with silver light, and after striking it with several spell seals, it was entirely absorbed.